School Board of Trustees. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all who are present and to our video viewers. Also let you know that everything that we will be discussing tonight has been posted according to the Texas Open Meetings Act at least 72 hours prior to the meeting.
Mr. Cooper Villegas.
Here.
Ms. Leanna Harding.
Here.
Mr. Matthew Gutierrez.
Here.
Mr. Alejandro Flores.
Here.
Ms. Stephanie Gray.
Here.
Ms. Melissa Myers.
Here.
And absent Mr. DeLeon English and Mr. Christopher Williams.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, the first item is for the approval of the minutes. If I can have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion approved. And the first item is for the superintendent's report. Okay, approval for the regular minutes on 8/18.
I motion.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Yes. All right, now we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Community Board of Trustees. Just wanted to give a brief update on our committees that we have been discussing for the last couple of months. Our superintendent designees are currently working with Sonia to schedule the first committee meetings. The three committees that the board has expressed interest in are one, the Finance Committee, the Policy Committee, and the Curriculum Committee. We are currently working with Sonia and you all to schedule our first meeting for the month of September, and we do plan to hold monthly meetings for the remainder of the school year. So you should be receiving communication, if you have not yet, from Mrs. Badil in reference to that first meeting date, which will be held this month.
Quick question for you on that. I understand the desire for having these committees, but there's really been no direction set forth by the board on deliverables, governance, what they actually want these committees to do, and what they want these committees to report back to. So I think, I think the committees need some direction from the board, the rest of the board, on what it is that the board is looking for these committee members to do. It's great to say that we have a committee, it's great to sit in on this, but at the end of the day, am I asking the right questions that the board is looking for in terms of the Finance Committee? Is the curriculum people asking the right questions, and so forth? So I think we need some time on the agenda, potentially next week or next workshop, to have a dialogue amongst the committee about what is they're looking for, what are the priorities, what do you want to see, what do you want to hear.
Would you like that to be part of the discussion during the training on Saturday?
If there's room on the agenda, that would probably work.
Okay. We can certainly make room on the agenda. Any other questions regarding committees?
Is it standing that it has to be monthly? I'm just concerned with all the meetings that we're having
Right.
adding one more a month might be
Well,
difficult.
Right, and the goal would be monthly, but of course you have months like November and December where it may be unreasonable to expect that you have a meeting.
Is that something we can definitely discuss on what our expectations are, goals for the?
Yeah, I think that needs to be part of the discussion as well.
And I missed the meeting where the committee members were now. Can you refresh what I got?
Yes, let's see,
You were on finance.
I figured that much. I figured that much. I heard that.
you were on finance. Mr. Forbes was scheduled for finance. For policy, we had Mr. Williams and Mrs. Harding. And for curriculum, we had Mrs. Gregg and Mrs. Myers.
Oh, no, that's fine. Finances, Linda and I will get on.
She's looking forward to it. Bated breath.
Okay, our next update is from curriculum and instruction, and we're going to start with Mrs. Glover, who is going to give us a brief update on key communicators.
And good evening. At the request of the board, you had asked for us to prepare some community partnership contacts for you so that we can have some of those partnerships and build those. We did prepare 52 options. We do have them, quite a few for you to look at. They're in a shared Google document from Mr. Gutierrez. And we have broken them down for you into town-related items, nonprofit community organizations, homeowner associations, and also our ministerial alliance. And so this made up a large group. With the partnership of Community and Schools and Corrine Lynch, we did go ahead and verify that these contact information is correct. So if you do reach out, you will be reaching out to the right person. If you do need some help in making that contact or building that, please feel free to let me know. I did want to point out a couple of things on your very first tab, stated Board of Trustee Information Sheet. Some of the organizations require elections to become a member, so I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. And then you'll notice there's a column if you'll just place your name next to the chosen organization. I did want to tell you we did not communicate with all of our community contacts that we would be partnering with certain board members or anything of that nature, but we did need to do our due diligence in updating our community partnership information regardless. So that was a really good exercise for us to have in the first place. Again, if you have any questions or anything, we did have a recent request come in from the town from Mr. Peach. If you'll notice on your town information tab, he specifically extended an invitation for the possibility for board member to participate in number 3 and 4, being the Town of Little Elm Task Force, which is Park and Recreation Board in conjunction with the Community Development Corporation, and also the Little Elm Parks and Recreation Master Planning Committee. He directly stated that he was extending that invitation, so I wanted to point that out to you all.
Miss Mika, and she's going to give us several updates, the first one being with the transcripts.
Okay, beginning September 2nd last week, we started utilizing 2 of the high school counselors 3 days a week in the curriculum and instruction department. And they're working for us full time on those 3 days, strictly to do the audit of the course catalog, which we are going back 7 years on that. We expect to have the course audit completed this week on September 11th. The next step will be for Brandon Thompson, our data manager, to work in tandem with those 2 counselors to make the corrections to the course catalog in focus. We hope to have this completed by October 3rd. Following that, we'll be ready to print the transcripts and begin hand auditing those to make sure that they are correct. We should have all of the transcripts ready for student review by October 17th. So that's the timeline that we've put together that we're aiming for.
Any questions surrounding the timeline?
Okay. You had asked for an update on elementary specialists. So the background in this is that 5 years ago, Each elementary campus had 2 reading specialists and 1 math science specialist. One of the reading specialists served only the dyslexia students, while the other served only those students at risk for reading. And then the math science specialist supported the teachers in science and then pooled students for math intervention. 5 years ago, the legislature cut the public school budget. And during that time, we were charged with cutting our budget as well. And so the district 5 years ago cut one of those reading specialists per campus, which left us with currently 1 reading specialist and 1 math science specialist assigned to each of the elementary campuses. The reading specialists currently serve all dyslexia students and students at risk for reading who are on Tier 3 of the response to intervention model for reading. And the math science specialist continues to support all the teachers in science and serves the students in math intervention who are on Tier 3 of the response to intervention model. In addition to that, last year, y'all approved for an additional FTE at the district level, and that's for our district dyslexia facilitator. And she works on 2 of the campuses currently whose dyslexia or reading specialists do not have their certified academic language therapist certification, which allows them to solely serve the dyslexia students. And so she goes in a few days a week to supplement their dyslexia therapy. She also works at the middle school 2 days a week this year, helping out with us as well. And she acts as the liaison between the general education and the dyslexia therapists.
Sounds like a lot of work. Is that, this was kind of my question. So do we have enough staff for the kids that need to be helped, or is that something that we need to look at potentially finding you guys more help?
Well, we're currently serving all of the students who are both dyslexic and at risk for reading with the 1 reading specialist. Additionally, the campuses that are Title I use their Title I funds to hire in a part-time tutor. Some of the campuses use them for reading or math, and they'll hire retired teachers or teachers that have reading specialists that don't want to work full-time, and so they'll hire them part-time. And they'll use their Title I funds for that. We also have our state comp ed money from the state for our at-risk students, and so that helps with paying for after-school tutoring. We also have the ACE program that also pays for that. So even though we only have 1 reading specialist assigned, that's not the only way that we have of serving our students. If you want to give us more money, we'll always take it. But
No, it just, there was questions brought up about it and wondered if we were over or understaffed for that development area and wondered if it was hurting our kids at all. Anything else?
Yes.
It's not relating to dyslexia or anything like that, but your curriculum and instruction right now, right? So I can ask you a different curriculum and instruction question while I have your attention. With the change of we're not having math testing this year. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. Okay. But go ahead with your questions,
Okay.
and then I'll answer that.
And then you can correct me.
Yes.
Okay. My understanding is the state isn't doing a math score or something like that at EOC, whatever, the changes. Because they're revamping the test, so they're going to do it next year, and maybe I'm mistaking. So my question is, I know that we've always had a problem with math scores in our district, particularly if you look at our ACT, SAT, and then as we get higher. And so my understanding from reading the papers is that it's supposed to be harder next year, the test. So what are we doing as a district to prepare so our students, our current 9th graders and 6th graders, when they get to 7th grade, 9th grade, and 3rd grade next year to take that test, aren't hit with a double whammy?
Okay. Misconception, we are giving the test this year, okay? The only area that it is not counting is for SSI, which is the Student Success Initiative in 5th and 8th grade, where they must pass the math test in order to be promoted.
Okay.
That has been waived. But we are giving the STAR test in grades 3 through 8 and the Algebra 1 test. at the high school EOC level, all right? We have known that the TEKS were going to be changed for several years now. There's a process that the state goes through when we go through TEKS revisions. So last year when they were adopted, the summer before, Dr. Mallory, our math specialist, looked at the alignment of the current last year's TEKS, the old TEKS, and then the new ones. And what we actually did as a district was she began incorporating the gaps so that we would not have as hard of a transition into this year, because this is the first year that they had to be implemented. But they were available for us beginning last year. Okay, so we started with the new TEKS actually and realigning our math units and bundles to make sure that we weren't going to be creating any gaps. Because what happens when they move math TEKS around, if they take it out of 3rd grade and they put it into 2nd grade, and then those 2nd grade from last year are now 3rd graders and it's not taught, it creates a gap. So what we did was we made sure that anything that was being moved to a lower grade, that we went ahead and covered that last year before school was over.
Okay.
The rigor of the test itself is not going through a revision. So the STAR test, rigor-wise, is still going to be the same. We're still going to have the readiness standards and the processing skills and everything. But what is changing is the bundling. So, for example, where you might have seen, and don't quote me on this, but if you might have seen place value to the 100th in 5th grade, maybe now that's been moved to 3rd grade. So specific TEKS have been moved around and rewritten, but not necessarily the test. But because the test hasn't been given in the entirety at that grade level, then we will see some revisions in the scoring.
So I guess I'm trying to prepare because
Yes.
the expectation is that the scores may be different next year.
So right, and we have always done really well on the Algebra 1 EOC compared to the state. That's been one of our biggest strengths. But we are working all summer. The teachers went through. We offered lots of training during the summer, and we've started a cadre now for our teachers. We always did it at the elementary, but now we're doing it at the middle school and the high school, and bringing them in to meet with our specialists once a month, and working on the TEKS alignment, the TEKS bundling. We've also moved all of our curriculum into Forethought, so that the teachers have better access to it.
We double blocked 6th grade.
And we double blocked 6th grade math students for that at-risk area.
Okay. Can I get a report, or can you just email me or something, a link of where I can pull the numbers? I don't want to cause more problems than.
Yeah, all of our numbers are on our accountability website, and I'll shoot you that link. They're right there on the
pull it
website.
for math. I'm interested to follow.
Okay.
Because I'm concerned, particularly as they get older. I know we start out strong, but then we tend to drop off as we get older.
Okay. We'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
You did. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not right now. Thank you.
Next, we have an update from our Director of Special Populations, Courtney Clover. She's going to give us an update on special education.
Hi, thanks for having me. I handed you a colored packet, just some school board update handout. And I just wanted to share with you on the very top, I give you a couple of links to where special education in Texas, most of all of the rules and regulations that we fall under the commissioner's rules, as well as the TEA website has an A to Z index for special education. And then there's also the legal framework, which is housed in the Service Center. ESC 18 houses the legal framework, which aligns all of the federal and state regulations that we're required to follow to implement programming for special education through IDEA. I just give you a brief overview of the services that we provide here in the district. We serve all students eligible for programming on the day they turn 3. So if you turn 3 years old and you're eligible for special ed and it's April 2nd, or it's May 21st and there's a week left of school, we're bound by law to provide you service the day you turn 3. So we have students entering our system all year long. We also serve babies starting at age 0. We serve infants who are deaf, blind, or are deaf-blind. And so we subcontract and work in conjunction with ECI to provide services to babies in our community in our attendance zone. And we also serve students through, some students age out at the age of 22. So depending on how they are exiting or graduating from high school, we have some students who complete through age 22, and we also have some who meet graduation requirements but return to receive additional instruction as we are really handing off the baton of transition to adult life to other agencies. So we're the agency in between, if you will, from early childhood to adult service. Listed are in the middle is all of the commissioner's rules for eligibility for special education service. So oftentimes we have lots of students in our district who have diagnoses. And having a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, may or may not make you eligible for service. So we are required to conduct evaluations, and these are the eligibility categories of which you can receive service for. There's a graph below, or really a chart below, that by campus gives you an idea of, as of September 5th, so Friday, these were our numbers in our district. The very bottom right-hand corner says 527. We have 527 students who are currently enrolled, and we've held their art committee meetings, transferred them in, and are receiving services as of Friday. We currently have 25 pending transfers for students who are new to the district from either another district or out of state, that those numbers in about 3 days will accumulate into about 550 students that we serve across the district. In that last column, the total column, you can see by campus, how many students are eligible for special ed by campus. And then our top 3 disability categories are in the top column, or I'm sorry, the top row. Column 08 is specific learning disability. These are our what we refer to as our more mild disability students who are participating oftentimes in general ed settings, need accommodations and some modifications. Then we have 09, which is speech impaired, speech and language impairments. And then column 10, which is autism. Does that make sense? Okay. The second page, we talk a little bit about and present to you the instructional arrangements of which we provide instruction and services to students in special education. And we like to refer to ourselves as a service, not a place. Oftentimes, some of our students get go to that special ed classroom. Well, you might have a classroom with lots of special ed kids in it, but we really are a service, not a place. And so we like to really propel that vision out there. We serve the majority of our students through mainstream and resource, and then we have some self-contained and specialized unit classrooms. Within these instructional arrangements, I mentioned before that we do have over this past year and currently, we have 3 infants at home in our attendance zone who are either deaf-blind or deaf-blind, and we serve them at home. We have 5 students, ages 3 through 22, that we contract with the Regional Day School for the Deaf program in Denton, of which we actually we transport our students there and back for their daily instruction. And we also had 1 student who is transitioning back to us to transition into his adult life that we had at the State School for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Austin. In the middle of your second page, you have a snapshot of instructional settings. And this was at the close of the last 6 weeks for last school year. But our numbers are looking fairly consistent. So once all of our transfer students come in, we should be sitting at a close to 555 students, whereas we ended the school year with 555, if you can see in that far right column for totals. And if you'll notice that overall, our identification for the entire district is 8.4% identified as students in special education, and the state rate is 8.5%. So that's something that we're really proud of, that we've been able to bring our numbers into a healthy alignment with the state rate. The next portion I just wanted to update you on is access to the general curriculum. So we really are always looking at how can our students access general curriculum and how can they be provided appropriate instruction individually for each student, while still being an enrolled 5th grader or an enrolled 11th grader, and what are those activities and things look like for instruction for those students. Almost 70%, if you look at columns 00, 40, and 41, almost 70% of our students in our program were able to support out in mainstream classrooms and pushing out supports into the classrooms with them. Approximately 11% we pull out part-time, and then the other time they're out in general ed. And then approximately 18% of our students are what we call self-contained. These are our most severe students who need extremely specialized instructional supports, and so that's about 18% currently that we have in those units. The third page, I won't read it for you verbatim, but if I was thinking, if I were you, I would like to know what these classrooms or these kinds of specialized units, what are they and how are they defined? And so this page just gives you an idea of the definitions of the kind of instruction and the purpose for meeting the demands of a student who might have such severe needs, that how is it that you would define that specialized instruction for them. The chart above that gives you an idea of where those programs are located on which campuses across the district. And then lastly, I just wanted to update you on the great things that are happening here in Little Elm in the special education department specifically. As you all know and have been probably part of for many years in a row, we host an annual Special Olympics track meet. If you don't know, all of our friends around us think that we have the best track meet in all of North Texas, which is an exciting thing to have as part of your reputation in the area. And so we are looking to have a tentative date of May 20th, similar to the same time frame we did last year. So we're proposing May 20th as our date for our track meet, and May 21st would be our rain out date on the event that we got rained out on that Wednesday. This past year, we've actually had, which I think is really cool because this is such a small group of kids, but we have had a group of parents that have come together and created a parent group that is a Special Olympics Booster Club solely for our Special Olympic athletes. And that's a really a testimony to the great families that we have in our community that want to support and see their kids participate and be successful in activities that, you know, oftentimes their non-disabled peers or siblings are participating in. And so that's a really great thing. Many of you, and if you haven't, as soon as we get the doors open, we always extend an opening and an invitation to you to come eat in the Vainami Cafe. I think some of you saw our Associated Press video that we were gracious enough to receive that kind of attention. Here, you know, a little cafe in Little Elm, Texas, and all the things that's going on in the United States. And we had an Associated Press reporter coming to see all of the great things we were doing. So I believe that the cafe should be up and running in about 3 weeks. They have about 4 or 5 weeks that they transition back and then have to kind of get back in the groove and relearn some things from where they were at. And then we'd love to have you guys come in and eat. We also participate in the transition fair with Denton ISD and Louisville ISD. So we've made great friends with some of our people around us, of which we will host in a fair-like fashion with vendors and those kinds of things. Everything to do with going off into your adult life, because everything that we are doing, even from identifying these babies at 0, is early intervention so that we can make them as independent as possible as adults. And the sooner that we can start getting information into the hands of families and students for them living as independent as they possibly can as adults, whether they're college bound, trade school bound, some students might be group home bound, but we need to be able to provide them and their families access to all of those things after they leave us. And so we will be partnering with those 2 school districts to bring together all of the agencies, the private entities, et cetera, for school and or agency dependency, for them to have that information and start looking for. This past year, we've also partnered with Career Technology Education. We have started building a repertoire of course descriptors so that when families and staff are in our meetings with students and we're looking at what career pathway is most appropriate for the student based on their interest inventory, we can look at the course selection guide and read more than just a paragraph about what that course is about. Oftentimes, our students need to, when we're planning for them, we need to know what is the grade level readability of the textbook in this very technical class. Because if this student has a reading disability, we need to know what is that going to look like for him or her, and how can we accommodate for them to be successful in that classroom, or do they need adaptive equipment? I mean, all of those kinds of things. Are there safety concerns if you're using sharp objects? All of those kinds of things that we just have to constantly trying to keep our art committees as to be the most informed consumers as they can when they're making those decisions for those students. We have in the past 2 years, and we'll continue, a parent education seminar series where we've brought in futures planners for, and they're nonprofit, for families for students with disabilities, so that families can understand about learning about guardianship. What does that look like? How do I know if I want to be a guardian for my child who may or may not have judgment and capacity to make decisions for themselves when they're older? How do you set up a special needs trust? All of those things. That is a very specialized process, but we try to bring that information into our families. We also have the care group that has been going strong. I believe this will be their 9th or 10th year that the care group has been working, which is our community resources for families for children with autism. And it's been historically ran by a couple of our staff members who have a child with autism. And we are starting to partner with our school psychologist, our licensed psychologist at the high school, and she has a lot of experience running nonprofit social skills groups. So we're trying to bring more information into our families for having children with autism. Another really awesome thing that we're doing this year that's brand new to us is that Mr. Metter and the middle school staff, we have actually created a partner PE program in the Public Service Academy, where we have our adaptive PE teacher, who is also our head of delegation for Special Olympics, is going in and co-teaching a PE class every day with his athletes, and they have 2-to-1 student to athlete ratio for them to have incredible peer interactions. I think that it's awesome to watch, because I think that the students who don't have disabilities that are in there are learning a whole lot more. It's incredible to watch that. Last couple of things, our tuition-based pre-K program that you guys approved last spring for us to open, we have a wait list. So we are at full capacity over at Chavez, where our tuition-based pre-K program is being housed currently, with a wait list of about 15 people, which I think speaks volumes to our community wants their children and their young children in our schools and are willing to pay to send them if they're not eligible for programming. So I think that's a great claim to our district. The last couple of things is that the special ed department for the last 2 years has started billing for Medicaid for students who are Medicaid eligible. We actually can get reimbursement through Medicaid to Schools program, or SHARS, School Health and Related Service Program. It is only for students who are in special ed and only those who are Medicaid eligible. But our first year of claiming, we brought in about $220,000 of direct billing, and we're projected, and Linda Engel's going to wink at me because until she sees it, she won't believe it. But we're projected for our first cost year report to have to bring in about $820,000 of reimbursement through Medicaid. So that's kind of special ed in a nutshell from where we're at right now. So if I can answer any questions for you, I'd love to.
I do, since
Yes,
I'm still
sir.
learning.
Sure, not a problem.
Do we get additional funds for every special need, and if so, does it vary based on the?
Sure, it does. We receive what is weighted ADA, weighted average daily attendance for students, depending on where they're receiving their instruction and how many related services that they have. So, there's a formula for each instructional setting or instructional arrangement that I think I mentioned on the second page for where they're receiving their instruction. So students who have more severe needs, their weights are going to be heavier, but the more time they're out in general ed, there's also a bonus multiplier in the formula for you're incentivized for having your students in the least restrictive settings, which is with non-disabled peers. So
Those
there's
funds have to be
several
used for
layers.
something in particular, or just for aids, or what do they have to be used for?
They have to be used on the program specifically, so anything that is directly related to students with IEPs, and then there are some indirect costs that can be covered by those funds. We do such things as, transportation as a related service is specific to only students with an IEP that are eligible for that service. So it's very formulaic based off of IEP service by student. I don't know if I probably answered that pretty broadly, but
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Just one last question.
no, you're fine.
Have we ever thought of maybe sending students with a particular special need to a one campus? For example, I see here the Chavez, we have 20 that are with other health impairment, and then we have some of the other campuses that have less.
Sure. Other health impairment is a very broad disability eligibility category. So that could include anything from a child diagnosed with cancer to a child diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and needs specially designed instruction. So it just happens to be that home campus happens to have a large group of kids, but individually it could be all for very different reasons. What IDEA and the Office of Civil Rights is very cautious and looks for is not prescribing disability-specific programming. Now, oftentimes what happens is you have clumps of students that come together because their needs are similar, and then sometimes within that layer, many of them might have the same eligibility because their needs are similar, if that makes sense. But we really are supposed to keep them at their home campus as best as possible, their neighborhood school. So.
Are there any staffing concerns with the numbers that are here right now?
We do have some staffing concerns at Brent currently, and I believe that Cleota is going to give you guys some information later this evening. But yes, we do have one major staffing concern, and that's it right now. Yeah.
That was similar to my question. So we do have some concerns, but we're going to get some information on that. How does our teacher-student ratio look right now compared to districts? One of the reasons I moved to Little Elm was for the special ed department.
Sure.
And I know there's been a ton of changes since I've moved here.
Sure.
So how do we still compare with other areas? And if we're getting that much refund, is there something we need to do?
Sure. In order for me to give you a breakdown of a student-teacher ratio, I could give that information to you by campus, and maybe Matthew can put it in the board update on Friday. I think you guys sent out a board update. But usually, our classroom, like a co-teach inclusion classroom, we usually try to not have any more than 1/3 of the class be students with IEPs if we're co-teaching and pushing in for that support. That's usually the ratio that we try to go by. When it comes to case management for a teacher, like at the high school or at the middle school, they usually case manage, which means they're the go-to special ed teacher for, the first line for parents to call. This is especially when you're changing classes 8 periods a day. Who do I call? Usually about 20 to 25 is a healthy case management load per teacher. And then when we start getting into our more specialized units, really that starts to become a different being. It's a different animal when you're in a specialized unit, because flat numbers don't tell the story of the need. And so really what we do is we try to go in and do student by student needs assessments to look at how weighted are these students' needs, and then build a class from there, and then use some parameters to determine what would be the best number of teachers and peers that you would need for this group of kids with very specialized needs.
I do have one more question.
Sure.
It kind of goes back to what Mr. Flores had asked about what kind of funding we get. I know that in the high school, a lot of the special needs kids are fully general education. So how does that affect our funding? They're still considered special ed. They still get services, but they are fully. They do, and they still get weighted average daily attendance. In fact, I mentioned before, there's an incentive to be in a financial incentive from the state to be in a less restrictive setting. So the more we can support kids out and not
pull them away from typically developing or non-disabled peers, there's actually an incentive built into the formula. So based off of their daily attendance, that average daily attendance, then they're weighted based off of their disability and then where they're receiving their instruction and then any other related support services that they might receive. So they might get psych services or speech therapy or occupational therapy. So that is like a whole week of, that's a whole nother monster is the funding formula for that.
I have one more question. Anybody else have one? Okay, just make sure. It just popped in my head. For the students that are fully general, what do we do to help our teachers that have to work with these students? Because I know some of them are a little bit on the more difficult side.
Sure.
Speaking from experience. So what do we do to help the teachers with these students when they're in the classroom?
General ed,
Especially
special
the high
ed,
school,
everyone.
Okay.
Well, first of all, we really are very deliberate about ensuring that all of our teachers receive differentiated instruction training on an annual basis. And so Ashley and I, we always jokingly tell people it really doesn't matter what colored folder your kid has. These are the strategies that we need to be utilizing that are the high yield strategies. I mean, research based. These are the things that we need to be doing if you're going to try to reach a kid who has, has a difficult time attending to tasks and the positive things that you can implement in a classroom. Or here's a student who has a difficult time with social emotional interaction and communication. So strategies based off of these different kinds of pockets of need, and that's really where we've usually brought somebody in that is really highly motivating to help our teachers experience what it feels like to be that kind of kid, that kind of learner, and then equip them with strategies for dealing with that. So that is on a blanket level. We also provide ongoing supports for how do you work with a co-teacher. What are the roles and responsibilities of a co-teacher versus an in-class support teacher? We do crisis prevention and intervention training for everyone in the district, that if you are in a situation where you need to de-escalate a student who's having a really, really tough time, trying to, make sure that all of our staff are equipped with those skills so not to escalate a situation. So I hope that answered your question. Yes, it did. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
Thank you, Ms. Clover.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. So, technology update?
Yeah, graduation
Oh, sorry.
update. I've asked Mr. Miller to provide an update on graduation date. As you all know, some communication would go out regarding your graduation date. And so Mr. Miller is going to provide some background as to why we were limited to the two options that were made available to our parents by the survey that was issued last week.
Good evening. I did a little digging, and what I found out was on May 22nd, Mr. Joseph was notified by Prestonwood Baptist Church that the June 6th graduation date that LEHS had secured would have to be moved to a different date. And from what I understand, Prestonwood has kind of a seniority policy where school districts that have been with them the longest get first choice as to dates. And so a school district that had been with them longer than us requested the date that we had, and so they called Mr. Joseph and told him that he would have to pick another date. And he chose the Thursday date, June 4th. And in the meantime, he directed Ms. Higginbotham, who is our secretary that helps organize graduation, instructed her to call UNT, see if they had any open dates. At the time, the only dates they had available were Saturday, May 31st, which was almost a full week before our last day of school, and Thursday, June 4th. In the meantime, Mr. Joseph resigned. He told Ms. Higginbotham that he would speak to Mrs. Lightheart about it. He resigned. Mrs. Higginbotham went off contract, and they were the ones who pretty much had knowledge of everything that had happened. In the summer, after Mr. Joseph had resigned, I was the acting associate principal, and Ms. Walker and I started talking about graduation. And so I instructed her to call some different venues again. I told her to try UNT again, and at that time, Capel had canceled their date, which was May 29th, which was Friday, which was a full before our last day of school. That was not an option. She also tried the Dr. Pepper Center in Frisco. The cost for that would have been $25,000. Parents would have had to pay to park, and the only available date they had was Monday, June 8th. She also tried Elevate Church in Frisco and the Curtis Colwell Center in Garland. Neither was available the weekend of June 6th. Ms. Pentecost came aboard. She found out about it just recently. Last week she sent out a survey to senior parents, and the parents were given an option of choosing the graduation to take place on Thursday, June 4th at Prestonwood, where it is set presently, or Saturday, June 6th at our stadium, the Little Elm Athletic Complex. 390 parents have responded to that email. 361 of them, or 92.56%, chose the Thursday Prestonwood option. And so that is where we currently are with graduation.
Are there any other venues?
No.
You've been in Dallas?
All the venues we've checked with don't have anything that weekend. Of course, one of the problems with graduation in this area is you have hundreds of schools competing for about 6 to 8 different venues. And, unfortunately, we were bumped out of our original Saturday date at Prestonwood.
Have we went ahead and reserved for next year? Not 2015, 2016?
I will check with Ms. Pentecost on that. I'm not sure if that has been taken, but I know if it hasn't, it will be done.
Because in years past, we've reserved it 2 or 3 years out because of that situation.
Yeah. I know that we are trying to get back to UNT just because it's a better venue for graduation.
Who made that decision? Who thinks it's a better venue for graduation?
Well, just as far as the setup,
cost-wise.
I know cost-wise
it's half the
lot
price.
cheaper.
Prestonwood was kind of a problem because students had to come in, be seated, and they had to leave and go around, come across the stage, come back around, be seated again. It was not handicap accessible. They didn't have ramps for students who were handicapped or in wheelchairs, things of that nature. That's the reason there was so much in and out and around. North Texas is more suitable for that type of practice.
But if I understand, we had it booked, we were just bumped.
Yeah, we were bumped out of our spot.
Sorry, go ahead. Was there an issue with just the time of day? Is there more than one district that's having graduation that day? I mean, can we move the time?
No, that whole day is completely booked.
Have we looked at the place? And I know this year it's set, so I'm not a proponent. We've done the survey. Let's leave it. I'm looking further out. Have you looked at where we have the convocation at that church?
Stonebriar?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Does that have enough seating? That's a nice venue.
And that's, I'm not sure what the seating is there. I know at Elevate Life in Frisco, of course that's very close, but they only have 3,000 seats available. And so that was one of the options we're looking, or one of the problems we're looking at them in the future.
The 9th grade freshman year is, I know freshman's a big class this year.
Fellowship in Greenville, it's another large one, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of big ones. Denton Bible's another big one.
Yeah.
I know we've had it at UNT in the past.
Yeah.
That's why
The last year out, before I left to go to middle school, we had it seemed to go really well that year.
And to avoid this and to hopefully be able to keep the Saturday tradition, I have had the opportunity to visit with Ms. Pentecost, and so we're working on scheduling early for 2016 to hopefully get that Saturday back.
Mr. Gutierrez also asked me to give you an update on high school crossing guards. That was brought to our attention last week. I called some local districts just to see how they do their crossing guard duty at the high school. we call Frisco ISD, McKinney ISD, Prosper ISD, Salina ISD, and Denton ISD. Of those, none of those school districts provide crossing guards at any of their high schools. McKinney is the only one. They do have one crossing guard at McKinney Boyd High School, and they said that's because students have to cross a 6-lane road to leave the high school. And for that position, they pay a person a stipend to do it. All the other districts, they do provide crossing guards at the elementary and middle schools. Frisco, McKinney, Prosper, and Salina either use their PTA, parent volunteers, or they pay paraprofessionals a stipend to do that job. Denton ISD uses the Denton Police Department to do crossing guards at their middle school and elementary campuses. Speaking to Ms. Pentecost, they did not provide crossing guards at any of the Garland high schools, and Mr. Molinar said that they did not provide any at any of the Grand Prairie high schools. But we want our students to be safe. Last week, at the end of the week, we went out and did crossing guard duty out here on Walker. Today, we switched our hours for our hall monitors, and from now on, they will be out there in the mornings for 25 minutes before school, and they will be out there in the afternoons for 25 minutes after school to make sure that our students can get across Walker safely.
Have you gotten any messages from volunteers? I know there's a lot of people saying that they've volunteered, but they haven't heard anything.
Mrs. Walker told me that she was the person to contact. She told me that she had 2 people to contact.
Find out, see what they're actually using to contact you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
And, there's a copy of the survey results and crossing guard information.
Mr. Miller, can I request on our school website, when you go to the class page, it still has last year's, I know last year's information, like the senior class page still has last year's senior class. I know it's just the beginning of school, but with all the changes and stuff, it might help to kind of boost the morale of the students and the parents and that kind of stuff, to update it with all the changes. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next update comes from technology. Ms. Davis is going to provide an update on deployment.
Good evening, school board. Thank you for having me this evening. As always, since I've arrived, we have done deployment at the high school. We've then moved back down to the middle school. And not only each year do we try to improve that process, we tweak it every night. If there's something that went wrong night 1, we look at it and say, how can we make it better for our parents? So I wanted to give you some information about how we changed elementary deployment, and then give you some statistics. It's a slide that you do not have at the very end that I added as of the numbers that came in today. But in April of 2014, the board did approve 1,100 elementary Chromebooks be bought for 4th and 5th grade students. The current enrollment at that time was 952, and so Dr. Porter and I thought the 1,100 would suffice at that time. Currently, though, our enrollment, when I put this slide together, was 1,090, and as of today, that's 1,092, which only leaves us 8 extra Chromebooks. So 20 additional Chromebooks have already been ordered. That order has, or we're waiting on the requisition has gone in, and we're waiting for the PO to come out for those to be in. August 29th, then information was released regarding the new deployment process, because in listening to our parents, we wanted to see if we could try a new process and try to actually help our staff out as well, our teachers. It is a lot for our teachers to take on deployment. With 6 elementaries, that was going to run everybody very thin. So we came together as a group and we looked at trying something different. Parents will register for their Chromebook online beginning September 5th, and that will run through September 15th. We're actually, at the request of the principals, going to extend that, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. There does need to be 1 registration per child. Parents will go online and pay for their Chromebook via a credit card. If they cannot pay via credit card, they will pay at the school at any time via cash or check. Chromebooks will be distributed to any person who registered and paid on the 18th in class for all 4th and 5th grade students. We then at that point will still leave the registration open through, I believe the principals requested the 25th, is that the correct date? Due to curriculum nights, and that way if anyone who can't make it before then, they can still come and do it up until that time, and we'll just distribute them in class as they pay and go online. Training materials have all been placed inside the registration process in both English and Spanish. And then other optional training for all LEISD parents will be conducted throughout the year. And the first one's going to be held in October. We decided instead of making every parent go through a training every year on the same sort of thing and trying to tweak it a little bit, we were going to make that training optional for that parent online and then provide those throughout the year for parents who wanted to come throughout the year to get training all year long instead of just one time. We're also providing a question and answer link for any parent who would like to have more information. We can do that kind of a blog style so that people can see those answers as well. Community communication, we did release information via the Friday newsletter and we'll continue to do that every Friday until deployment. The information was also released via Twitter. It was released on the campus websites on Thursday, September 4th. And it also went home through School Messenger, I think, by Friday, September 5th, and we will repeat that weekly as well. So plenty of communication about the new process. Our updates that I just put in today, as of today, we still have 16 high school students who have not turned in their computers from last May. That is $16,000 worth of computers that we're missing. We have 8 summer school students who still haven't turned those in. All of those students' names have been turned into the high school administration, and those house principals are calling in those students to try to find out where those computers are. I know that Ms. Walker has started calling as well, and if it gets to a point, what happens is an official letter from the police department actually then goes out. We have 33 students as of today who are still waiting on computers. And because of that is because of the growth at the high school. We were not expecting, we did surpass the enrollment numbers projected by the demographer. We have 13 in for repair and an order of 40 should be shipped this week. That order's already in and it's on its way here. So those students will be taken care of hopefully by the end of the week or at the first of next week. At the middle school, we had 41 machines that were finished repairing today and will start delivering to the campus in the morning. I just got that information from Ms. Bittner this afternoon. 21 students are waiting on a machine and those are being repaired and prepared this week. We are not short machines at the middle school at all, but we do have a requisition in to order 20 additional machines to make sure we do not run short and we have hot swaps available. And at the elementary, just because of the sheer numbers, we are ordering an additional 25. Like I said, our numbers are already up to 1092 and we only ordered 1100. So we grew a lot this year, really fast, unexpectedly. So that's kind of where we stand for deployment. Like I said, if this process goes well, we would like to look at this for the process for next year, as this is very trying and taxing on our parents, on our students, and on our staff as well, right when we try to return back to school. Do you have any questions?
2 questions.
Yes.
Sorry. The 41 repaired, we kind of go together, was it categorization of what types of issues?
Most of those are broken screens and or they break the spleen on them.
Second question, high school lab, we always kind of say it different. High school laptops, did we remove Microsoft Excel Office?
Yes, we did. Last year in March, I believe Ms. Gregg, I replied to you in this. The bill for Microsoft for students is right at $20-something thousand a year. And so we went to the curriculum instruction team, we went to the leadership team, and to the administration of the high school, and we put out a survey form, and all curriculum coordinators as well. And we put out a survey form that said, what would it look like if we did not have Microsoft Office? Seeing we have all access to Google Apps because we are a Google Apps for Education district, and on the MacBooks we have Pages, Keynote, and the one other thing that matches Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Already preloaded, it comes on the Mac itself. And then you have online tools such as Prezi and all those things. And we said, what would it look like if we didn't have Office to try to save the district $20,000 per year? And none of those people replied that it would be any problem. Our biggest concern was career and technology, to make sure that they would be taken care of, and Tasha and I decided, or we looked at it and said if it would be an issue that career and technology could help out with that. And so far it hasn't been a problem. So that was removed to save the district $20,000.
Where'd that $20,000 go?
That $20,000 is out of IMA funding, Cindy. IMA funding in the past has paid for all the Microsoft billing for the district.
IMA funding is, prior to 2 years ago, the state owned all of the textbooks, and they sent us textbooks, okay? If we needed extra materials that were not in our allotment, then we would have to pay for those. But after the state went through the budget cuts, one of the things they did was that instead of them owning the textbooks, we own the textbooks. And so we get an allotment of money every year that we can use to purchase textbooks for students. If I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago, we used a big chunk of that money for wireless. And it was, we were actually one of the first districts that did that because we had to apply to the state for that money to be released for that purpose because we were going to digital learning with our initiative. And so now that is a standard for the state allotment. But we purchase different things with that money, but it's a limited amount. And so we watch it pretty tightly.
What's that total amount? Say a limited amount, what's that total amount?
Can I get that to you on Friday? I mean, I don't have it in my head. And so
we talk about all these budgets, we talk about everything that's in there, and now there's this kind of other budget that
well,
there's discretionary spending.
Okay, well, for example, this year we had new adoptions. And we had new adoptions in math and science. And so we had to buy new textbooks for math and science for the district. And so you can imagine what a textbook costs and what we're purchasing. And so last year, y'all approved those textbooks. The next year, we're going to be adopting textbooks for foreign language. All of that has to come out of this money. We also pay for Renaissance Learning out of that money. And that is our required screening for all students in kindergarten through 8th grade in math and reading that we have to do 3 times a year. So we get an allotment, but there are some things that have to come out of there at the top anytime we have a new adoption or anytime there's like that we pay Renaissance Learning for, that type of stuff. I can give you that more detailed. I mean, we have a website that we log into. There's 2 people in the district that are allowed to get into the website.
Yeah, if you can give us some more details on that, I'd be interested in the total budget per year, what we've spent on it thus far, where the funds have gone. Because I'm not so sure if it was brought to us that I would have not found the $20,000 to put Office on the laptop.
Well, and I'll be honest, I wasn't part of that discussion last year. That's new that I'm learning in this role. So last year, in 2014, our regular IMA allotment was,
Pardon me, I'm scrolling quickly.
Was $500,000. And we spent all but, it looks like maybe 4,000 of that last year. So we rolled that 4,000 into this year. So I can let you know what we paid, but when I set up our allotment for this year, I basically just copied it over. It was anything that was a new adoption, and then I knew that we had to pay for Renaissance Learning and some of those big contracts. But I'll be more than happy to share.
Ms. Engel, does this money...
No, sir, it's in a different fund. It's in Fund 410. So therefore, that's why the board does not see that particular fund. It's not a fund that we actually bring to the board for approval. We can certainly bring it to the board for your consideration. But the legislature changed, as you said, two sessions ago, and instead of the textbooks being a textbook state type of issue, they give you a specific allotment. It's in a different fund. They have control over it. So there'll be more. We can certainly show you what our allotment is based on the number of students and how the funds are being spent.
So this $500,000 is not in our budget?
No, sir. It's not in any of the funds budget. It's not in 199, 511, or 240. No, sir, it's not. It's in Fund 410.
Thank you. If you can give us some update.
Still more questions?
How many parents took the insurance for the Chromebooks? $40.
That's one of the things I'm finalizing now because I had pulling it up on my computer because I have to send that information and it's retroactive back to the deployment date to the insurance company. It has to be there this week.
Do you think it's greater than 50% or?
I believe, from what I saw at the middle school during deployment, yes. Now here at the high school, not so much because of the sheer cost of what the insurance costs for MacBook Air.
So have we thought of maybe allowing the parents to purchase a Chromebook? I mean, I recently saw a Chromebook for $200 years ago. Hard drive, I'm not technologically savvy. Maybe there's some restrictions there from the school perspective, but for $200, if your child's going to use it for 5 years, maybe make good sense.
You mean instead of us purchasing it, letting the student bring one in themselves?
Is that an option? We don't have to worry about laptop deployment and the craziness that we see at the middle school.
I think that's a good question. We've had these conversations before around BYOD, bring your own device. So whether it's a Chromebook or your own Air, or if you can get away with an iPad, so maybe it's time to just kind of circle back on that discussion of what is the district strategy, what is the timing around BYOD.
Has it been exactly something that I've addressed since the day I was hired, was what was the sustainability of this program? And could we sustain continuing to buy devices for students as much, especially with the MacBook Airs, at what they cost? Because they're getting ready to come up for renewal next year.
That was actually my question too, because I have 2 fifth graders. So knowing that I have 4 years, at $40 per, I could easily buy 2 Chromebooks, for that cost. So that I have that question.
The only thing is if you're paying $40, and that does include insurance, and they repair that between 5 to 7 days. So if you bring your own and you break it, you probably have no way to get that machine repaired.
Right, and that was my other question, is around fixing those.
I don't know what the cost of that's to buy an insurance policy.
There's not very many companies who offer insurance. In fact, it took me a little while to even find this company that would offer this type of where the parents can opt in or they choose not to. In other districts, there was one where one district actually bought the insurance for the whole entire district. But this type of insurance is very hard to find.
And I thought that the plan was to phase, like you said, to phase out and go to the BYOD once the MacBooks were like the 5-year, once they reached that point.
I believe in the last April update, Dr. Porter said we would start looking at other means or other tablet devices. But since I wasn't here from the beginning.
Last year we talked about it, that it would only within the next year or 2. And it was on one of those Friday meetings, but we had talked about phasing it.
And even with the growth that we sustained this year, I mean, ordering 40 more MacBook Airs, that's $40,000. If you order the Apple Care, they're still about $800-something a piece without the Apple Care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a good hit into the fund of where we put money for repairs and those type of things. And that was been my question: is how do we sustain this program?
Personally, I would prefer something without a hard drive. So kids can't save all their stuff in there and particularly at school, because you can restrict them with the internet here at school.
Correct.
Right. So I would prefer.
And that was one of the discussions we had today in leadership, was about BYOD. And the only thing that lies with a BYOD is if a student does have a hard drive, you cannot control what is brought into school with that device or on that device. They can preload movies, photos. Only thing I can restrict is the internet access through a filter. Other than that, I have no control to what is on that device when they bring it in.
But we can do that with the Chromebook, correct? They don't have a hard drive.
There is no hard drive on Chromebook. They have their own camera built in, but
kind of going back to the presentation for the high school ones that weren't returned, are they current students or are they students that were graduated?
Some of them are still current students. That's what I said the administration is pulling those students out.
Do we know how many of, you said some of them, how many have graduated or that aren't here
That
anymore?
I do not know. I was just provided the list of the students who did not turn it in from last year's inventory report.
And then I know you're talking about changing the way the registration process for when we get the laptops or Chromebooks or
If
whatever?
this elementary process works well and we get good feedback from our parents, we wanted to look at this process as a whole for next year, if we move forward.
I think that's an outstanding idea as a parent of several kids left in the district. I mean, it could even be an online, when you register, watch your video, click, pay, keep
Part of focus,
going.
that's what we
It
would
can
like
all
to
be a
move
one
to.
step.
It's very
I
taxing
am a
on all the staff
proponent.
members to do it.
The elementary folks will make it work, I'm sure.
Yes.
I did have one question. Someone asked, how did they have proof that they watched the video online? Just one of the elementary.
That is, it's one of those where it's not mandatory. So we're providing the training for you there. We're providing more optional training in a year. It is not mandatory.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about the voucher for that one.
That was one of our complaints from our parents, is, you know, we get it, so why are you forcing us to do this? So we're going to offer it optional. Any other questions?
One other question on, is there currently a backlog of computers, I'm pinpointing the middle school, in the Chrome Dome as far as that aren't fixed?
Right
or
now,
still-
21 students are waiting on their machine, and she said they have the parts to repair those and prepare them and get them out this week.
And so is there any reason those 21 weren't repaired throughout the summer?
Yes, we actually put our hands, one technician, as I was telling you today, we have 5,000 computers in this district, just computers, and I have 5 technicians. There is one person at the middle school to handle that and one paraprofessional who runs the Chrome Dome, and she doesn't work in the summer. So we touched 95% of every Chromebook needed a repair.
And then they also had deployment going on at the middle school, at the high school at Prestwick, which was taking them away from being able to have those ready for kids day one.
Plus, I mean, we've talked about an array of things, such as, you know, we have to dismantle almost every classroom to prepare for cleaning over the summer, but then we have to come back in and put it back together in a week's time. And that, when I say 5,000 computers, that's just computers. That doesn't include projectors, document cameras, phones, and I have 5 technicians. We're doing our best.
So at budget time next year, we should expect possibly to ask for another technician?
Thank you very much.
Last question.
Yes.
If we're making the video optional, the waiver that the parents sign as they pick up the computer, Chromebook, whatever it is, are we ensuring, have we beefed up that document at all so that they don't come back and say, well, I didn't know that?
The only thing that a parent signs off on, that actually signs if they watch, if they do anything, is actually in the registration process, not for Chromebooks. They actually say that they read the acceptable use policy, and that's in the registration process to register to come back to school. The video was just mandatory because when we wanted to make sure they understood about digital citizenship and digital footprint, and we've kind of got a grasp on that now for the last few years. So.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I'm sorry, I know you're ready to sit down. I have one more question, and it's not about the kids' computers, it's about the teachers' computers. I was reading in one of the updates somewhere, and I'm sorry, I don't remember because I've been reading a lot of information, that one of the teachers' notes or something said that that was one of their comments, that they needed some more, that was one of the comments from IT, that maybe the response time to get their computers fixed, or there was some issues or something, or can you kind of talk about that? I think it was one of the elementary schools or something.
When a teacher needs a repair of a machine, they're asked to put in a work order ticket, and that's kind of that same issue. This year, we allowed teachers to keep their laptops for the first time because of PBL, because of all the things that a teacher does to prepare themselves in professional growth for the summer. Normally, those have been turned in, and we've had that opportunity to work on them, do what we needed to do, and this year we did not. It's kind of a catch-22. Some of them didn't work. They need printer drivers loaded, and it's in the mix of those 5,000 machines.
Okay.
So we're getting to them as fast as we can.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of bring it to your attention to.
And the principals also did something in the principal meeting for me. Besides just work orders, their campus teachers actually put a list that still gave us some more information, and I'm going through that list tonight as well, and hitting campuses to go back through.
Okay.
To help out with that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have Mrs. Epps with our Human Resources update.
Good evening, board members. First of all, just wanted to talk to you briefly about the Gallup education, the survey that we're getting ready to do. That is still on track for October. There it's been several weeks ago now that we made an appointment for a conference with their team as well to go through the process and a firm timeline of dates. And that conference has been anxiously awaited, and it's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So I hope for the next board meeting to have more specific details. But at this point, they're well aware of the timeline as far as wanting the survey done in October, and we're going to discuss that tomorrow afternoon. Then I'll be able to bring back to you their final outline of exactly how it's going to play out. And then as far as the vacancy report here, I just saw the clicker coming. Here we go. Vacancy report, we are actually even a little above and ahead of this report. We have filled the Hackberry third grade position. We currently have the music position open at Lakeview, and we have struggled to fill that position. The current plan, we have a gentleman that is well qualified. He's coming from another state, and we have to wait for TPA to go through the process of recognizing his certification from another state, giving him a probationary and so on. In the meantime, we are avidly trying to recruit him to be the substitute in that classroom so that we can avoid having any transition if we don't, additional transition if we don't need to. So that's where we are at that. And then here just this week, we have opened a Spanish position at the high school, which is not on there. It just hit. Then, in our administration update, the assistant superintendent is still open. Technology network administration is it's listed as pending. Once Ms. Davis came back this week from vacation, that now has been filled. We're in the process of completing the paperwork on that, and we will be recommending an assistant principal for Lakeside Middle School tonight. Any questions I can answer?
I thought there was something for the special ed.
It's not an opening because the position itself hasn't been approved. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
May I speak out of turn, but I would like to congratulate David Rodriguez, our high school technician, who was actually promoted to Technology Network Administrator this week. So.
Yay.
Our next update is coming from Little Elm's town manager. Matt Miller is going to provide an update on some of the happenings in our town.
All right, good evening, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. I thank you for allowing me to speak with you for a few minutes tonight. I'll keep it relatively brief. I know that you've got a lot of business to take care of, but I'm happy to answer as many questions as you see fit. It always excites me to talk about what's going on at Little Elm, so sometimes I get a little animated and carried away because it's really an exciting place to be. So I'll talk about the boring projects first. I'll give you the TxDOT update. I really want to make sure everyone knows that it's the TxDOT update right now because we're just about as frustrated with the road projects as everyone else, and particularly El Dorado. I'm sure you've noticed it's under construction. I'm sure you've noticed that that's created some interesting traffic flow situations for at the start of school. Doug Peach does go to those weekly meetings to try to get direct information from the contractor and from TxDOT. The project is behind, from where it was originally planned to be. We do think that there's good news on the horizon. The last update we have says that the two major intersections that create a lot of havoc for us, the intersections at Lobo and the intersections at Witt, we do plan currently, the contractor's telling us that they plan to have those completed by sometime in October. That will certainly help out a lot. We do anticipate having 4 lanes of traffic open by the end of the year. And 4 lanes of traffic, generally what that means is that they'll have all the lanes done, they'll have them open, but they'll probably have the inner 2 lanes on each side blocked off so they can continue doing work in the median, the landscaping, the lighting, the decorative stamped concrete, those sort of things. So El Dorado, that's winding down, thankfully. That'll have a huge impact, especially down here in this part of the community. kind of down on the peninsula, because there's been so much construction in this part of town for so many years. It'll be kind of nice for the construction to move elsewhere, which it's going to. Move kind of on the outsides. We've got the 720 North project. 720, I believe, will be done from El Dorado going north, with the eventual goal of having it constructed into 6 lanes all the way to 380. TxDOT ran into some water line issues. They had to rebid the project, and in order to keep things moving, they're going to do it in 2 phases. The first phase will be from El Dorado to McCormick, just south of Martop, and they've actually bid that project. I think they're still waiting on some of the utility relocations, and they anticipate starting that project, having construction begin in the first quarter of 2015. So that'll be good. And then 423 North, which is going to be a very good project, should be kind of going on about the same time that 423 South is happening in the Colony. If you've been from 121 to 380, you'll notice that there's a great stretch of road in between Lebanon and El Dorado Parkway that's widened to 6 lanes. The rest of the road's going to be like that. The Colony's had significant issues with some of the utility relocations. I'm good friends with the city manager there. He started his job I think a little over 4 years ago. That project was bid and was supposed to begin before he got there. They ran into issues with utilities, and so much time had passed that the prices changed so much they actually had to rebid that. But it has been rebid, the job has been awarded. That should be starting about the same time that 423 North is happening, which should be in the next few months. They are going to prioritize some of the temporary stoplights on 423 North. I know this isn't in Little Elms ISD, but we do get a lot of concern from folks at the intersection of Sunland Park and El Dorado, or 423. Just there's an area there where it's almost impossible to make a left turn, and it's very difficult and out of the way for those residents in El Dorado Estates 3 to get out onto El Dorado and Frisco to go to their destination. So TxDOT is going to put in a temporary light. So for those of you that frequent that area, that should help the traffic flow there. Those are the 3 state highway projects that are underway. So we do have a couple more years of construction, but fortunately it will be moving to a different area of the community, so folks in other parts of the community can get sick of it. And, down here we can relax for a little bit. We're doing some road enhancement projects ourselves. Marion Drive, which is kind of over by the lake to the other side of City Hall and the Community Center, is being rebuilt. We've been in the process over the last few years of trying to transition all the asphalt roads into concrete with curb and gutter. We still have some older roads that are asphalt and have kind of the rural bar ditch style, but it's the eventual goal to transition all of those, so we continue with that. We're beginning our annual street maintenance, which will take a lot of the areas of concrete that are kind of sinking down, and they do a process where they inject some kind of foam product underneath there that raises them up to keep us from having to go in and completely replace. And then there'll be various areas around town where you'll probably see construction cones just sporadically for a few days as they tear out various panels and repair those. As you've probably seen on Walker, there's the landscaping project is finishing up. The lights have been on now for a few months. The landscaping is finishing. They're doing some of the intersection improvements. A stoplight at Woodlake and Walker has been bid and should be constructed in the next few months. So that'll be a great help, we think, to the traffic in the community. We were able to get that. Anytime we add a new stoplight, we have to go through a warrant process with the state. And we made sure to warrant that intersection whenever the intersections of Woodlake and El Dorado were closed, because we knew there'd be a lot of traffic there, because we know that that's an intersection that needs it, but it didn't quite meet the warrants yet under normal circumstances. So we timed it so that we could get it at a peak traffic day, because we know that there are certain times, because of all the school traffic and construction, where that road is really a hassle. So that should be underway very soon. A lot of our efforts right now are focused on our parks improvement. Parks and recreation are a huge priority with the town of Little Elm. If you've been out to Little Elm Park recently, you've seen that they're kind of on the finishing phases of putting the finishing touches on the Little Elm Park expansion, which greatly increased the size of our swim beach, relocated the boat ramp away from the swim beach, and put a new pavilion and restroom facility, as well as increased parking lots. We're under design, and we're very anxious to get the Beard Park project started. For those of you that have been around Little Elm for a few years, you probably remember the significance of Beard Park, and we got considerable amount of comment when that park kind of temporarily went away to make room for the expanding lakefront district. That has been a little bit held up because we're dealing with the Corps of Engineers, and there's certain approvals that we have to get from them because a lot of it is in floodplain. But it's under design right now. We've got plans to submit to the Corps. We hope to have that park, along with the historic log cabin and post office, constructed in the spring or early summer for the community to start using. We're very excited about that park. It's going to be kind of a natural play area that's kind of reminds you of days gone by when you can kind of open up the back door and send the kids outside to play until the dinner bell rang. And we're kind of trying to put tree houses and old kind of logs and nature amenities. So we're really excited about that one, and it's going to be distinctively unique from our other two community parks at Little Elm Park and McCord Park. At McCord Park, we've kind of got the innovative, space age looking, playground equipment from Germany, and over at Little Elm Park, we've got the beach, and eventually we'll be upgrading that playground to kind of have more of a beach and tropical theme. But then Beard Park, with all of its historical significance, is going to be kind of that traditional, natural, nostalgic park. So we're excited about that. Special events, we're also very busy on that front. Not this coming weekend, but next is our annual Autumn Fest, which will have the 5K run, the Rock the Dock run, this time in the evening. And they're kind of going along with the rock and roll theme on that, and I think they're getting people together and trying to get them to join in groups and dress as a band and kind of get some fun and excitement along with it. They've got an anything that floats contest, which is just what it says. Anything you can put together that you think will float in the lake, do it, I guess, and get out there until it sinks. They've got the annual barbecue competition, the Miss Little Elm pageant, the carnival, all the fun things that we've come to expect from Autumn Fest. That happens next week. After that, we're gearing up for the Pumpkin Hollow, which was the first time event last year where they had, about a mile of lined trails that had carved pumpkins. I think we had close to 500 pumpkins that were donated and carved. So made this really cool effect where you'd walk through the woods with pumpkins on every side, and they've got kind of a little haunted trail as well, and then kind of a little carnival. After that, it's on to planning for the Christmas celebration. It'll be the first weekend of December. It's going to be exciting because with the construction of the new beach, there's the new parking. It went from that half circle that used to be at Little Elm Park to a full circle. So we plan on putting the Christmas tree right in the middle of that, if you guys saw that. We had some interesting weather last year that put a damper on a little bit of the Christmas celebration, but we bought a nice new tree last year. I think it's 30 feet tall. And we shot firecrackers out of it, which is pretty cool. And it's gonna go in the middle of the circle this year and have a lighting with the little Santa's Village elf houses around it. And then along we'll have the annual holidays parade and continue to try to grow our Christmas celebration. So we've got a lot going on. Other than that, it's really for us trying to plan for growth. We're in the final stages of our annual budget. That'll be before the town council next Tuesday for consideration. And a lot of our efforts are trying to plan for the future. We've got a lot of long-term financial planning that's addressed in our budget. We're trying to plan for the rapid expansion that's happening out on 380. Again, I know that's not in Little Elm's ISD, but there is ground breaks, I believe, Wednesday on the Union Park development, which is nearly a 3,000 home development out there. And then that's actually in the city limits, and then we've got a lot of our service area that's in Paloma Creek. Windsong is growing, I think, a 5,000 lot development in Prosper, so there's a lot of activity on 380. It's a challenge for us because it's a mix of so many different jurisdictions. Some of it's us, some of it's Aubrey, some of it's Prosper, some of it's Frisco, some of it's county. So we're really trying to work with the neighboring agencies to plan long-term to provide police and fire services to that area, because right now there's not sufficient levels. We've added another police district out there in this coming budget with 4 officers that'll have more of a presence out there. It's a very dangerous stretch of road. We're working with the county and the state to try to plan for future expansion and making that more of a boulevard rather than the U.S. kind of thoroughfare that it is now. But that's taking up a lot of our long-term planning is what's happening out on 380. But it's an exciting time. We've got a council that's all marching in the same direction with their vision. They've got a very distinct vision of where they want this community to go. There's a level of excitement about everything that's happening at the school district and all of the things that you guys are doing as our partners. We look forward to continuing partnership and growing that. And Acting Superintendent and I met last week and just sat down to have a cup of coffee and talk about all the things we can do in the future. And we really look forward to expanding all the things we can do together. So happy to answer any questions that you may have about the town. And I'll blame them on TxDOT.
Can't blame the boat ramp on TxDOT.
The boat ramps are great. What's wrong with the boat ramp?
Where's the dock?
Oh, the dock.
That's core.
No, I can actually blame that on another agency in
That's
the
the
state.
core.
We just got approval for the grant. That should be out to bid soon.
But you have the dock on site, right?
No, the dock is we actually had to do that, the Little Elm Park project in 3 phases. We did the parking lots in the first phase because we got, all that required from the Corps was a consent to construct. Then the beach and the boat ramp itself, we did in the second phase because that required the environmental clearance from the Corps. And we're waiting on the restrooms and the actual courtesy dock because while we had permission from the Corps, we didn't get, that is grant funded from the Department of Wildlife, State Department of Wildlife, and they didn't sign off on that funding until last week, so. Thank you guys for allowing me to visit this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next update is coming from our Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations, Mrs. Ingold.
Yes, members of the board. And to show you what a quick learner I am, I'm going to do, my first report is on transportation. So I'm going to report, I'm going to blame it all on TxDOT. Now, I did want to share with you a little bit about our transportation. We're currently running 47 routes using 44 buses. So 3 of our routes are doing double routes. Our drivers come in between 5:30 and 5:45 in the morning. The first week, really, we do a lot of monitoring and tweaking of our routes and the number of students are on there. So I really just want to thank you, the board, as well as the parents, for having patience that first week. I know that as recent as today, we had one route that was going to Oak Point and then coming back across the bridge and picking up the middle school in the Hackberry zone. And we weren't getting to the middle school until about 8:20. So we've actually split that middle school route off and put it on another bus. So even as much as today, we're still monitoring those routes. But it takes a good week for us to really understand how many students we're going to pick up and how long it's going to take us to get there. So I appreciate that. And if there's any questions about transportation, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we're trying our best.
We were talking about renting 4 buses from Denton.
We
Somewhere?
Actually we rented 5 buses from Gold Star. They brought them at $235 a day. That's what we did, Mr. Vegas. And we do have those on site. Any other questions about transportation? Next, you asked me at the last board meeting to give you a little bit of a forecast about where we think we're going to end our 13-14 fiscal year. So, of course, if we were looking at where we're going to end the 13-14 fiscal year, which ended August 31st, we're going to start at the beginning and look at actually where we started the year. And we started the year with a budget, the general fund budget, that's our operational budget, and that's the one we talk about most of the time. We started the year with $46.5 million in estimated revenues and $46.5 million in estimated expenditures. And then, of course, over the 12-month period, we do lots of things. One of the things the board authorized was our tax maintenance notes that we issued in order to do the renovation to the middle school this summer. We also have hail damage, and we had our insurance, we were TASB, or our insurance carrier. We had a claims adjuster come out, and if you look at our reports, we'll see that the insurance company actually paid our school district $2.6 million for recovery for our hail damage. We received impact aid because about 20 of our 40 acres is underwater, so we received federal funds due to that. And we budget $125,000 for impact aid because those are federal dollars that go into our general fund. And the federal government, you file the application, I file the application every year, but they only pay you if the appropriation is done. If they appropriate the funds, you get it, otherwise you accrue it and they pay you when you get the funds. So the district earns about $425,000 per year based on the formulas. And usually you just don't know if they're going to appropriate it or not. So I usually budget about $125,000 for impact aid just to be conservative. And we did receive in about $425,000 this year, which is our allocation for the year. Ms. Clover talked to you a little bit about SHARS or Medicare. That's the additional funds we received in from the Medicare reimbursement that we're talking about relating to special ed. I think we received in, I budgeted $150,000 and we got $65,000 over that for this fiscal year. The federal fund money, again, is tied to your impact aid, so those two figures together came in relating to that, and that's a little more than I budgeted. If you're talking about various, there's about $72,000 that came in, and those usually have to do with your games, the camps. They have to do with different types of rentals that came in. This year we received AGRO back.
most of you are aware that if you have land in ag use, you're paying a much lower tax rate on that. So you're paying really based on ag use instead of market use. But when a developer comes in and purchases that parcel of land and changes the use of it, then they have to pay rollback taxes. This is the first year that I've actually seen this come in. Is over, and that's a huge amount of money. $683,000 came in on rollback. The other thing is we have additional state aid, and that really has to do with what we budgeted. I budgeted on 6,126 students, and we ended the year, I think, with 6,234, so about 111 more ADAs than I anticipated. So those are the overages from what we originally budgeted, and so it brought us our revenues up to about $55.9 million. On the expense side, you'll remember that we had payroll. Let me pull this because I want to make sure I have the data for you. On the payroll side, you'll see at 13-14, we actually added an additional 7.5 FTEs during the year, plus we also had some settlement that we paid out through payroll. The additional technology that we're talking about, we actually talked a lot about that this evening. We had the technology for our elementary teachers. We had the desktop replacement. We had the upgrade of the network switches. We had the technology of the Prestwick, and then we had the Chromebooks for 4th and 5th grade, and that came in those figures. So these are just a recap of the budget amendments that the board approved throughout the fiscal year, ending up saying that the board authorized us to actually spend $56.7 million.
Ms. Engel, can you give me a little bit more detail on the various camps for the 148 on the expenditures?
It's playoff games, summer camps, and signage rental, Mr. Biggis. And if you need more detail about that, and it's really just a recap of everything that didn't fall in the major categories, but it's those types of items for the 72,000. And they put it in revenue.
No, on the other side, on the expenditure side, the 148.
The last bullet item.
You have here.
Right. And they, at the same time, but when they receive the revenues in, they would pay the expenditures for the referees and for all those sorts of things. We pay those back out again to do.
So it looks like a net, in basic terms, it looks like a net loss of $70,000. We took in 72, we spent almost 150.
But that, Cooper, I'll get you a breakdown. That isn't correct. I mean, it's correct what I have up here, but there's other things in it.
The details, yeah.
Yes, there's in the details. Those numbers are correct, but it isn't all related to camps. It's just kind of various. So if you want to break down between the 72 and the 148, I'll send them to you. But it includes more than that.
I figured as much. I was interested in the detail.
Yeah, no, sir. It was just kind of minutia of that, different things together.
Well, you saw this room on the slide, roll it up, I got it.
Yeah, okay, I can show it to you. But no, your big items are those, but that's various stuff, so it would be inappropriate to lead you down that road because that's not correct. So those are your total expenditures that came out to the 56.7. So we had revenues that came in about 55.9, and we had budgeted expenditures. Now you budgeted them. Just because we budget something doesn't mean you spend it. And that is the case when you look at these things. And these are projections for year end. Our auditors will be in November, and the auditor will present to the board the final findings probably in December or January. So these are just our forecasts based on what we're looking at on accounts receivable, accounts payable, and historically what we spend through the end of August. And what we're talking about on payroll for the $808,000 is that payroll, again, you have to remember payroll is like $40 million. So there's anytime a person leaves the district, then you're going to hire back in. It may be a month or two before you hire them. You might be losing somebody that has 15 years experience and bringing somebody in with 0 experience. So there's always a difference. I keep saying that payroll is a living, breathing type of aspect of an organization, especially in school districts when you have so much in and out of it, because you're going to see that. Plus we have FMLA. We have quite a few people that go out a lot of times on maternity leave. So as long as they have leave, of course, they continue to receive their paychecks. But once they're out of their leave, then there is a savings in payroll for the district. And you never know how many people you're going to have on FMLA for family sicknesses or whatever. But for this year, we're estimating our payroll to have a net benefit there of about $800,000. Also, you remember that when Mr. Reeves went out for bid for the middle school renovation, he issued tax maintenance notes at $4.7 million, and there was about $1 million of savings whenever we actually did that project. So that $1 million is still sitting there. It was approved, but because of the bids came in, it was not utilized, so it's sitting there. As well as the bus barn, the board authorized it's $456,843, I think, for the bus barn out of general fund balance. And since that project's been put on hold until we rebid it, then it is also sitting there not spent at this time. Our transportation budget, since we had brought that back in-house, currently what we're using, we're looking at about a savings in that particular category, about $500,000 this year. And so that's one of the reasons why, whenever we communicated with the board, that we could go ahead and rent those 5 additional buses without increasing our budget from one year to the next, because we could tell we have some savings there. So that's how we are covering some of the costs in 14-15, because we budgeted the same dollar amount for transportation in 14-15. So we know that we have funds there that will cover for the bus rentals. And then supplies and materials, which is a 6,300 object code. Just throughout the district, if you look throughout the district, there was about $500,000 that was underspent in supplies. So we really anticipate our subtotal, or what we really will spend as of auditable numbers, to be about $53.4 million, which would indicate we would increase our fund balance by $2.5 million. So, our beginning fund balance in the general fund was $18.2 million, or right at $18.3 million. We're estimating our fund balance to go up to about 2.5, and this is a snapshot as of August 31st. Then our fund balance on our audit would be about $20.8 million. Now, in full disclosure, further in the discussion for next week's approval for the board, Mr. Reeves will present to you his roof assessment. So when you look at that, and I'm saying, just so you're aware of that, this $2.6 million that we received in insurance recovery, it's really pretty much sitting in fund balance. So if the board chooses to approve the recommendation, which I support, for the roofs as well as for some HVAC, then that number will go down by whatever the board approves next week. So just so you're aware. So, because it is not included, it will not be included in your fund balance at this date, because as of now, it's still sitting in fund balance. Any questions relating to that?
The supplies and miscellaneous, kind of a, I guess, small question. Does that include like printer paper for the school?
Yes, it does.
Is there a way that we can make sure that they don't run out at the end of the year? I know there was a lot of discussion over that at the end of last year, that they didn't have paper to print out assignments and things, especially after the Chromebooks and things were picked up.
Ms. Hardy, seriously, I'm really surprised, because most of the campuses, if they run out of funds and they need something, if you look at their budgets, most of our campuses, nor our departments, spend all of their budgets. So if they run out of it, it may be in the wrong object code, but we do, I have 4 binders of budget amendments. Okay. So it's not like we don't do a lot, and we only bring the ones between functions to the board. If they're within the same function, I can approve those, and we just do journal entries. So, certainly I would communicate that if anyone says that they ran out of paper, then they ought to call our office, and we would look at their budgets with them and see if we can't help them. Okay. And if they don't truly have any money, then certainly we would try to find those funds. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions about fund balance? And that's really good, because you can see over a lot of the district is a lot of renovations and upgrades, and we're still in pretty good shape. We're still in really good shape with our fund balance. And then finally, on my part, I'm really excited. Matt Mueller just asked me if the SIM actually opened. I think they had a tool going. He really did. And so, we're really pleased to let you know that certainly the SIM opened. We've got 662 kids over there at it at the moment. But the dedication, the board responded, it will be September the 21st at 2:30 p.m. You all do have in your folders the invitation, communicating that to you guys. We're working really hard on that to make sure we have a list of the people who are going to be speaking or we've asked to speak. I just wanted to let you know that we have actually talked to, we want to try to make sure that we communicate with everyone that has been involved in that. So we've invited the Colony mayor, the council members and town staff, as well as the Little Round mayors and town managers, as well as State Representative Fallon, who was at our groundbreaking on August 31st. In addition, we invited our partners, Matthew Southwest, who has been our partners in this project all along, SHW, our architectural firm, Poe Construction, who actually constructed the facilities for us. In addition, we invited the design team, who was very instrumental in coming up with the curriculum and how the instruction was to be delivered. The visioning committee, which Mr. Vigas was part of, that we toured all the different facilities to make recommendations about how it was to be designed, the actual facility, as well as the campus staff and all of the Prestwick parents. So we tried to communicate to all of those. The dignitaries will receive an actual invitation, handwritten, and everyone else will send emails to and get through our normal modes of communication. Any questions related to that?
I know there was not to drag this back up, the naming convention, the naming of the school, the whole issues around that, and specifically with the veterans. And I think we did go ahead. One of the things that I asked at that time is rather than just acknowledging Sergeant Mondragon, but if we can do something for all veterans across all services, and I believe we did get something for that.
Yes, sir.
Do we have anybody invited to represent that, to represent the veterans?
Well, to answer your question, not specifically, we do not, Cooper. We have actually, it's a great big stone that will be out by the flagpole, and that's really why it's supposed to be here in time to have it on the 21st. We are kind of having, it's International Peace Day, so they're singing Why We're Here. We have the choir that will be there to sing 3 different numbers, but I'm certainly open to that because we're putting together guests that we would like to participate. If there's any suggestions of someone that we might ask to come for that particular venue.
Yeah, I'm not sure who to reach out to, but I think it'd be, whether we can have them do flag raising, have them participate in some of the ceremony, or at least acknowledgement and dedication of the plaque.
What I can do, I can go back to that meeting, 'cause if I remember correctly, one of those veterans spoke, so I can go back to that folder and pull the information.
Well, if you'll pull their name, I'll be more than happy to reach out to them and ask them if they'd like to participate in some manner.
Yeah, the American Legion, that group or whatever.
That would be nice.
Now, it is currently our plan to have the dedication inside, the actual stone and thing to be out at the flagpole, Cooper, so.
Right. Be creative.
Yeah, okay, I can do that. And we will have ribbon cutting, which I think will be really cool. We'll have to have the whole service really on the 6th grade band area where the choir is, because we anticipate 300 or 400 people to be there minimum. But the ribbon cutting, I think, would be really good for the board and the superintendent to be at the learning stairs, to be a big yellow ribbon and scissors and whatever the dignitaries are, whatever honored guests that you'd like to have on there after the ceremonies, after everything. So, any other suggestions? If you get them to me, we'll try to get the rest of them out this week. So if you have any suggestions.
Just other councils and mayors from the different, like Lakewood and Oak Point. I mean, it's a new school, the district was trying to include all of them.
Sure, I can do that. Be happy to.
You said you were inviting the folks at the tribute. Are you going to invite the parents that don't live at the tribute to other children?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
We sent, actually, Ms. Gibson is sending an email to all parents of all students that go to there. So yes, sir, we certainly will do that.
If you can just let us know if you want us to wear little own shirts or if you want us to wear professional shirts and professional attire.
Now, of course, I Googled it. Everybody comes in pretty nice to dedications. And since I'm kind of in charge of it, wear your Sunday best. So I can just add that, wear your Sunday best.
I just want it to be appropriate.
It's really right. That would be good.
Thank you. We're on the lake on Sundays, okay?
Right. You have to change, Mr. Diggins. You have to wear your Sunday best. That's right. And we are asking various people to speak, and one of which is the student that actually came up with the name. I know, because she actually attends there, so we thought, so we thought it would be very appropriate that she actually stand up and say again why she thought it was important to name it that, and then how her experience has been at the campus and associate.
Great. Great.
All right. Any other questions for me? If not, I'm going to ask Mr. Reeves to come and do his presentations related to construction and construction.
Thank you, Ms. Engel. Appreciate everything.
Before Mr. Reeves starts, I certainly, while we have the board here and have an audience, want to recognize Mrs. Engel's work in making sure that the Prestwick STEM Academy opened. We know that there were some challenges and the time frame was shortened significantly, but the opening of the school was quite successful and certainly took a lot of hard work and effort from the project manager, which was our Assistant Superintendent for Business.
So, thank you, Ms. Harding, and members of the board, and Mr. Gutierrez. Just give a quick construction update. If we take a look at our Arts and Humanities Academy and Public Service Academy, we just have some pictures of sort of the opening day. And so if we go to the next one, Holly, you can see this is the library area that we've opened up, and we've also provided a sprinkler system as part of this project. We did that out of contingency, and so we did that. If you go to the next one. You can see, I think Mr. Metter's there in one of these pictures here, teaching class. He does lots of things over here at the school. And so another collaborative area. This is just right off another collaborative area, but you notice the flooring that we've done, and also we've kind of exposed some existing tilt wall construction. This is another collaborative area that we've done. Remember, the board wanted to kind of take the existing facility and open it up, and so you can see that we've got furniture, and there's still more furniture coming in. And this is kind of over at the PAL facility. We've kind of taken some of the classrooms and opened it up to the hallways. And so, try to keep up with you, Holly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So, just the main thing is we're substantially complete. That we were ready for Meet the Teacher and the first day of school. We're still, thank goodness, it was a lot of work. We really appreciate the staff and Mr. Mentor and his group and team for working with us. They were very, very flexible. Still flexible. We're still working on some punch list items. There's some things on the HVAC systems that we're working on the controls and just getting those correct. So the contractor will be working with us for this whole next year for those items. Any questions on the middle school?
That's really good.
Thank you. Go to the next one here. If we look at Prestwick STEM Academy, Ms. Engel talked about that. Really appreciate all her help on this. Go to the next picture. It's kind of opening day. You see it's just a beautiful facility. Got all the landscaping in. Go to the next one. Just a learning stair area that we have there, which I'm sure Ms. Gibson's going to be thrilled to use. Go to the next one. Just a space being used, one of the, I think, the elementary classrooms. Go to the next one there. And this is kind of looking down into that collaborative area. Remember that we kind of took the hallways and made those learning spaces as well. And so you can see this is actually how it will be used. Go to the next one. Again, substantially complete. Thank goodness for Ms. Engel and all her work. We got everything ready for open house and first day of school. We're still working on those punch list items and warranty items throughout this semester. Any questions? Stan? We take a look at Zellers, just some pictures of this. I think we showed this to you last time, but you look at the next picture, Holly, the child care area. I think Ms. Hooten is here. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for your help and support. She was very flexible as well. The next one. This is kind of the office area that we've done. Just the paint carpet does wonders. This is that staff development. This used to be the gymnasium, and so we turned this into a staff development, and I think they've been using it quite often. So child care, DAP, we thank Mr. Bush. I think he's here too. Thank you. We're still working with him for everybody's very flexible. But child care DAP was ready for children and students. We're working on the boardroom, the live streaming, and the audio. It's about a 45-day turnaround, so might be a little bit of time before we get in there. So I'll work with Mr. Gutierrez on the exact date. Administrative, HR, and superintendent move will be in December is what we're looking at doing. So I think our staff might want a little rest before we do another big move.
So I'm thinking about the time when the construction's done. It's about the time when we'll move in.
That's right. That's right.
If you can time that right, that would be okay
Matt's
with me.
right, man. If Matt's right, they're going to be done in December. It's perfect. So,
yep.
Any questions on Zellers at all? Taking a look at the plant services and transportation facility, we're back on track on that. We go to the next slide. We have revised the drawings. We're almost completed with that. We've been working with Mr. Heidel. We met, I think, 2 weeks ago, Ms. Engel and I, with them. We were working with the town to expedite the site package. The reason we want to do that is we want to set the propane tank. The propane tank has already been through the Texas Railroad Commission submission process, and it's been approved. We do need to send out a new advertisement for the rebid to get it within the cost that you allocated. So we'll bring that recommendation back to you hopefully in the next month or so. Any questions?
Any additional costs in the revised drawings?
I hope not. We're trying to get it within the...
Let me know if there is.
Now, there is a possibility, Mr. Biggis, that we come back and it's over budget, so we'll have to bring that to you. So we've done everything we can to get that thing within the price. We went from tilt wall to a metal building. We took it from 3 bays to 2 bays. So we're really trying to value engineer as much as we can. But we don't want to cut our nose off the spider face either, so we want to bring that information to you. Additional projects, we have the practice field at the high school is completed. So we're watering that and fertilizing until it gets established. We're looking probably about 60 days for that. I think next year you'll really see it looking great. We refinished the basketball courts at the high school. Those are completed. The repair at the track at the Little Elm Athletic Complex has been completed. We did the new floor at Hackberry Elementary School for that. It looks great over there. And then HVAC and maintenance work throughout the district. I think, Ms. Gregg, you talked about some certain things. We've learned that HVAC is like laundry. Because I do laundry at our house, it's always there. If you don't stay on top of it, you're going to spend a big weekend, all weekend doing laundry. So we're trying to stay on top of it. We'll come back later on some things to you. So, but we're working on those items. So on that note, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Any questions?
I'm good.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
All right, the board at this time will recess into closed meeting, and the conference room is permitted by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Code Subchapter 551.074 and 551.071 at 8:25. We're going to reconvene into open session at 9:24. And the first item is, we'll go ahead and discuss and approve. To discuss and approve the recommendation for Lakeside Middle School Assistant Principal. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
Members of the board, I would like to recommend Mrs. Elizabeth Miller as the assistant principal for Lakeside Middle School. Mrs. Elizabeth Miller's most recently has served as a contract consultant for teacher evaluation instruments.
Is there any comments from discussion? Welcome. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
I didn't vote.
Oh, you. Okay, so motion carries.
Now.
Well. All right, next item is to discuss and approve off-campus PE.
So moved.
Second? Everybody second? Any discussion?
Oh, just same as last time, we had 4 more applications come in, and so the applications ended on Friday, so we shouldn't get any more till next semester. They're under your cover.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our next item is discuss and approve the teacher portal.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Is this the presentation that we got for?
I don't have a presentation. The teacher portal, the state provides one. It's not as robust as what we currently use with Eduphoria, which disaggregates our data down to the TEKS. For our teachers on unit tests as well as state assessment. And so we would like to continue using Eduphoria instead of the state supplied data portal.
Cost difference between one versus the other?
Well, we already, we could say nothing because we already use Eduphoria. The state one is provided free of cost, but the man hours to implement it and get it up to working is, can't even think about how much it would take. Fort Worth attempted to go there this summer and backed right off. None of the districts in Region 10 or Region 11 use the state-supplied teacher data portal.
Eduphoria is also paid for as a bundled package, and there are multiple objects inside of it that we use. We use the workshop feature, Forethought, and it's a bundled package. So you are going to get it because we've used all the other items within the suite.
Okay.
So this is something we've been using, so this is just a continuation? Okay.
We only have to ask for the waiver every 3 years.
Every 3 years. Any more questions, concerns? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we're going to move on to our discussion items. The first item up for discussion is policy BED local.
You have in your board book the recommendations from our law firm, Mr. Agabon. You had requested that we look at ways to change this policy so that we would have more participation. Currently, we have public comments at the general board meeting only. So the first change that we requested, starting on page 2, is to also possibly have that at the workshop. Okay, so that's the first thing to decide. Do we want it at both the workshop and the general meeting, or do we want to keep it at only the general meeting?
I like it at both, because that gives us another option, especially if they bring up points or concerns that we may need to address before we take action on some items that are on the agenda. And also just gives an additional opportunity for public input.
So you're saying that you want the audience to be able to talk back to you?
No, this is just a citizen input.
At the beginning?
Yeah, just like at the regular meeting.
Okay, so the 3-minute, if they fill out a card.
So this would be
Okay.
still the
Sorry,
same
you had me
rules.
nervous for a second.
Still the same rules, folks.
Oh, good Lord.
Sorry. Yeah. So that was the first one. So if you do that, then we can have the public comments at both the workshop and the general. So it'll be this meeting and next week's meeting.
Okay.
Not special meetings, not here.
Not
Just
special meetings,
our
not
regularly
committee meetings.
scheduled meetings.
Okay. Then the second change is moving that public comment. We have it at 3 minutes right now per person, and that would move it to 5 minutes per person. And then currently we have, if they have delegations, that if more than one person wants to talk on that subject, then you pick one person to talk for everyone. And this, the second part of this is that if you have a delegation of more than 3 people talking on the same topic, that it would reduce, they would all be able to talk, but it would reduce their time from 5 minutes each to 3 minutes each.
We haven't really had to enforce this one. I mean, we've had it before, but we haven't really enforced it because we have so few people talk.
Yeah.
We've just let them all speak even when they've all spoken about the same thing.
Okay, so I'm going to write this up for next, I'm going to, rewrite the policy for next meeting. So I'll put it in that we're going to do the workshop and the regular board meeting. We'll have public comments at both. And then that no presentations shall exceed 5 minutes unless there's a delegation of more than 3 people on the same topic. And then each of their time frames will reduce to 3 minutes each.
And they'll still have an option to not speak if they don't want to. So if they want someone to speak for them, that's fine. Just some people were upset last time when we did that to them, that they still wanted to speak and they couldn't. It just kind of opens that up a little bit. And last time we did have a large group speak, it still was less than 30 minutes. And we had a couple of them go over 5. So.
Okay, so I'll write that up and then that'll be put forward next board meeting. And then the other piece that we had started talking about was what you had mentioned was the open forum.
So, if we went that route, then these are some possible changes here that he has beginning at the bottom of page 2 going into page 3. If you choose to, because the first part we've talked about is the public comment. Now you get into the open forum where at the regular meetings, you would allow 1 hour for an open forum, 30 minutes on the agenda and 30 minutes off agenda.
Yes and no. I mean, the first 30 minutes, the public comments at the beginning can be on whether the sky is blue or red today. It can be on whatever they really want. You know, I was looking for, you know, to scare Stephanie when she just said she was concerned about. You know, when we had the meeting on the 18th, I guess it was, the public hearing, it was nice to have engagement. You know, I don't know why we wouldn't continue to offer that level of engagement. However, we need some very specific guidelines to be able to not run hours and hours, whether it's, you know, for a particular agenda topic, you know, we may offer 5 minutes of open comments. We may open 5 minutes. I don't know. I don't know what other districts do. I don't know, even outside of school districts, what town councils do. Is there anybody else out there that has public engagement during discussion items? And I probably would not have it during the regular board meetings. I would have it during the workshops.
And I tend to agree. I guess I was looking for more of a, not a debate, but if there's issues addressed, that they can be addressed by the board. So if, I think one of them was an email that was sent that there was no response on. You know, can we respond to that, you know, as the board to that person? It's not a debate back and forth on subject matter, but it's more of a, you know, response to the topic at hand.
Well, if you
I don't think you can do that, because that would have to be on, so the debate that I'm talking about, debate probably not the right word, but the dialogue that I'm talking about would be on agenda items, which would have to be on the agenda items to comply with the Open Records Meeting Act.
So you couldn't really address something that was
that's not on the agenda. And that's really what that first public comment is. The first public comment where we're not allowed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the first public comment where we're not allowed to respond is, like I said, for anything that they want to talk about that we're not allowed to address, because whatever they want to talk about may not be on the agenda. So that's why we can't respond to it, because if it's not on the agenda, we'll violate the Open Records.
But if it is something that's a topic point or an agenda item on there, it could be addressed.
When we're at that discussion.
So
when we get to that in the agenda, we can, because if, I don't know if you were here 2 meetings ago or the last meeting, there was a lady that had a comment, and when we got to that item on the agenda, we were able to make sure it was answered, and we kind of talked back and forth to address her concern. And that's allowed. I mean, we can do that anyway. If they bring it up, if they address it in citizen input, then during that item, when we're discussing it, we can reach out to the person in the audience.
I don't think our policy allows us to do that, not today.
Well, I don't think our policy doesn't. That would kind of violate, because we can technically do that, especially if they're talking about it. But
we can discuss amongst the board. We can't bring the citizen back in.
Our current policy does not allow us to have a dialogue with anybody else at any time in our board meeting.
No.
Period.
So our bylaws say we can't?
No. Our policy says we can't.
Because we say at the beginning, this is a meeting of the board, not a
So they give their question, you can respond to it, but yes, you're right, you can't sit back and forth and debate and have a dialogue about it. That's what your policy says.
So on here, it would be maybe that second section there. Persons who wish to participate in either open forum shall sign up with the presiding officer or designee before the meeting begins and shall indicate which topic about which they wish to speak for the agenda item.
And maybe we, you know, kind of just off the cuff and everybody jump in and join in the dialogue and conversation. You know, maybe it's something like for a particular item that's on the agenda will allow 2 public comments at 3 minutes each. I don't know. We don't have to. And again, I'm one of 7. It's just, it was nice to engage the in some form of dialogue to the community members, but we have to have limits on it so that it can't just spin out of control.
And I think maybe it's how it's phrased, that maybe it's the phrasing, maybe we leave it open-ended, where there's gonna be those meetings that it's a high profile, something that's gonna be important to the community. So maybe we phrase it in our policy, so if it warrants it at the workshop, we can allow for public, for an open forum, if it's based on the agenda item, and it would be, you know what I mean?
Deemed by who?
Deemed necessary.
But deemed by who?
By the board president.
By the board president, or by, because you can't really kind of vote on it, or consensus of the board, yeah. It'd have to be
No,
like,
but it'd be one of those standing agenda items that if deemed necessary.
So
Or maybe it's just a standing item, but
possibly some wording like this, that if the board president deems the issue to be of,
At the board president's discretion.
at the board president's discretion, or request of a particular board member.
that would be appropriate.
So that it's not every agenda item, that we can, that either the president or a board member can say, I think that this particular agenda item should be opened up for community input and dialogue, limited to something.
In some language that, it's really for purposes of assisting decisions to be made. If you need more information on an issue, it's not so much for the dialogue back and forth in the debate, it's more, we need more information to make a decision on this.
Or we'd like to know how people feel about it.
Right, exactly, yeah, and that's part of it.
But I like the verbiage of board president or by request of, that way it's not every agenda item.
And it's only going to be at the workshop meetings.
Only workshop
not
meetings. Linda, we won't get into discussion with moving vendors. I know that's what you're concerned about.
I have a list. I always have a list. I'm good. Okay, so what we'll take forward then for your discussion and review next Monday is that we will put in the new policy that we're going to open public comment up to the workshop. So it'll say workshop and general meeting or regular meeting. And then we're going to change it to no presentation shall exceed 5 minutes. Delegations of more than 3 persons on one topic shall be limited to 3 minutes each to present their views before the board. And then instead of this piece on the open forum, then we'll go with the language that they come up to the effect of in workshop meetings only, at the discretion of the board president or by request of a board member, yada, yada, yada. Something.
The other thing I'd like to understand is, are we being completely rogue on this? Are there any other boards out there that have anything like this?
I've worked in only three districts, but I've not seen this.
From what I could see, most of them were pretty stringent.
I can tell you, I go to board meetings and I don't see it done. It's not to say it's a bad thing, it's just if you're asking, that's the honest truth. They do have public comments, so people can comment on anything that they want at specific times, but as far as opening it up to, various issues on the agenda, it's not something that I see. But it's not to say it's a bad thing, it's just not something that I see.
Do we have consensus that this is what we want them to bring forward?
I like it. And I like the open dialogue a little bit. Like you said, that we've got to control it.
That's going to be the main thing, is you just want to be mindful of your board meeting lengths, and that's not the most important thing, of course, but it's just, it's an issue.
Yeah, there has to be parameters, otherwise it will very quickly get out of control. It could get ugly very quickly.
We could amend or change.
Yeah. I know personally I've gone on the internet and I've looked at like Frisco's and Plano's and Carol's and those board, because they all stream them and they don't do this kind of stuff.
Town councils?
Well, town councils do. And the districts that I looked up, their policy is very similar to what we currently have.
So the town council, and so I'm just asking, if town councils do it, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't the school boards? Is there anything significantly different between councils and school boards that one would do it, one wouldn't?
The only thing I would say is schools are a little more volatile than city council in most cases, from what I've seen. They tend to be, there's a lot of passion around schools than there is city business, in my experience.
Do we want to draft this and prior to taking it to the board for a vote, do we want to run it through our new policy committee?
It's a good idea.
I think so.
Okay. So let's not put some.
Then that doesn't push us to try and get it ready by Monday.
Yeah, right.
Work
That's a good
on it,
idea.
And then we can put it through over the first policy meeting that we'll be having this month.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that's a good
then
idea.
we will,
They're going to old policy that I want to bring up. So I'm hoping that once that committee gets in, that's kind of where they'll straight through.
Good test run.
Yeah.
all right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Discuss additional FTE.
Yes, we're going to bring forward a request for 4 additional FTEs. Sped at Brent, 5th grade Chavez, 1st grade Hackberry, and a testing coordinator at the high school.
I move that the board approve the recommendation for 4 professional FTEs.
This is not a voting.
We'll do that one. It's just for discussion. So is there any questions or?
Then, we're also going to bring forward the personnel sheet for hiring and resignations for the summer months. And that personnel sheet will be provided at the next board meeting. And finally, going to bring forward a recommendation to increase the Little Elm High School color guard aide position from 178, and there's a correction there, to 187 days to match the teacher that the position supports.
Does that change the fiscal implications as well? I'm assuming.
Actually, it'll bring it down.
Right. So
Yes.
if we can make the
It'll bring it down
correction.
to 1,000 even.
Okay.
And then finally, going to bring forward an addition to the PDOS appraisers list, an addition of 1 assistant principal. Any questions?
Thank you. Financial report?
These are routine reports. The reports are through July 31st that we have. Any questions relating to our financials? And then the next item are gifts and donations. And if you look at your board packet, it shows most of these gifts that we received are really gifts related to convocations, the last one we have. And through this date, which we're trying to do gifts because they're all current, to date we've received in value $71,112.49 worth of values of gifts the district has. Any questions relating to gifts and donations? No. If not, then we are adding additional vendors to our list. Any questions relating to the additional vendors that we're asking the board to approve that we can do business with? If not, then the final item that I have is a facility use rental agreement. Based on our facility use guidelines in September of each year, we bring forth the contracts relating to different churches in our community that uses our facilities for church services on Sunday. You will notice that we have 4 different churches that are requesting to use our facilities in 1415. It's Point Church, Calvary Christian Fellowship, Disciples of the Christian Bible Fellowship, and the Praise Fellowship Worship Center at the various locations. But this is for a 1-year period. Any questions relating to that?
Are the dollars amount the same?
They are, they pay a flat amount. With no questions, and that's all that I have. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Reeves to do the last two items.
Thank you, Ms. Engel. Members of the board, we'll be bringing to you a agreement between Little Elm ISD and the town of Little Elm for the installation of communication equipment on the Lobo Stadium. And this is to help facilitate traffic signal communication all the way down El Dorado. And so actually the town has an agreement with TxDOT to have Frisco manage all of these. And so what they'll do is help to synchronize all the light signals along El Dorado all the way to the tollway to make sure that traffic flows the most efficient way possible. Any questions?
I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
I've kind of read through the contract a little bit that we have. Can we get like a drawing on exactly where they're going to put it and everything that they're going to be doing to install this?
Sure. Sure. We can get a list of the.
So, yeah, sorry, I'm going to have a couple of them here.
Okay.
I'd also like to know, I didn't see anywhere whether if they're going to install their own meter box.
Okay.
Is this going to be on the inside or the outside of the press box?
I believe there's a portion that may be on the inside, but I think some of it's going to be on the roof.
On the roof, okay.
Yes, like a repeat or something like that.
And then if we don't approve this, what would their plan B have to be? Because I noticed this
On
is
top
kind
of their
of no cost.
town center or whatever, so.
Okay.
So we're trying to be good neighbors.
Put a new water tower in.
I know, well, that's what I'm asking, because this looks free. So I'm asking, what would they do if, if this is the damage? I saw the
Well,
liability, that was my other.
I'm sure the board has the discretion to use this however they wish to.
And it's just some of the questions that I was concerning.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get a list of that for you and give you a location of all of that. Anything else? On that note, I'll move to insurance recovery concerning the roof assessments. And so back in July of 2013, the district kind of worked with a roofing consultant and also with CASB and some of their appraisers to look at our low slope roofs, our 2-ply bit roofs. And so we noticed that there had been some damage to those, and we worked with them to file a claim on that behalf. We ended up receiving $910,000, a little over that, for repairs. And I want to make sure that first we brought that to the board, that was just for repairs only. That wasn't the replacement cost. And so since that time, when we first brought it to you, there was another hailstorm that came through the district. And so we noticed that a lot more damage occurred. So there was a subsequent claim, or we did an addition to that, a supplement to that existing claim, and that we had monies allocated to us for the replacement of some of our roofs, specifically Oak Point and Hackberry. And so they awarded us approximately, let's say, $1.6 million, a little over $1.6 million for that. So it comes to a total of $2.5 million. Now, a portion of that went to the roofing consultant, which was $38,000, and then we used $10,000 for some remediation of water at the high school. And so we're going to be asking the board to approve the total roof replacement at Oak Point and Hackberry Elementary Schools for the 2-ply system. They actually are going to rip off the existing roofs, add another additional layer of 1-inch insulation to bring it up to the current entry codes, and then put on a 2-ply system, and then repairs at Chavez and Brent Elementary Schools. Remember, those are metal roofs. Those aren't low slope roofs. It's kind of like your car. It might not look great, but they're still very, very good roofs. So the roofing consultant thought that we would do some minor repairs there. And so we have a list of those in your packet. Also, there's some repairs at Little Elm High School we would like to do as well. So any questions on that?
When would we do the repairs?
Actually, the system that we want to use, we could do on weekends and during Thanksgiving. If we went to a tar, we'd have to wait till the summer. So.
Do we have any issues with waiting till then, with the damage that's,
Well, sooner rather than later, because we still have leaks at the high school and things like that. So spring. So. Oh, HVACs. Oh, thank you, Ms. Lingle. So we're also asking Mr. Vegas, I know you would like to hear this, requesting a portion of this insurance recovery go towards HVACs. And we talked about HVACs earlier, and so we just would like to have money set aside in case we have 2 or 3 big units that go down. So there's 100 units here at the high school, so 5 or 6 of those go down. There's a lot around the district, so that's all we're asking.
And if I could put into that, if I could add to that, our HVACs, I mean, we have HVACs really, they're everywhere. I mean, they're from little ones to big ones, there are all kinds of them, outside the door, outside classrooms, on the roofs, they're everywhere. And I don't understand why. But you know, we turn them up in the summertime, they're not utilized the way they are during school. And then when we go back and start school, they have to come in. And then I'm telling you, the 2 weeks before school starts, it is a full press to try to get our HVACs up and running. And it may be because we haven't spent a lot of money maintaining them over the years, and the fact that they're all getting old. But we really are going to have to start spending some money on HVACs, or we're going to continue to get complaints. So the $100,000 really allows us to evaluate and to put some new, especially the small units that are outside the windows, we can replace several of them that way. And Mr. Cogdill has a plan, Danny Cogdill has a plan about how to go about that. He's had it evaluated. And we need at least the $100,000 just to keep us from having to try to find money all the time to get a repairman out here to try to bang on them to make them work. That's just the facts.
You made the comment that we haven't spent a whole lot of money maintaining them. What would that maintenance be, and how much would that cost, and would we get our return on that investment?
Well, we have money set aside in our budgets to do routine maintenance, like we replace the filters and clean the coils out and things like that. This money would be for, let's say that a unit is just 20 years old, just goes down completely. And so we replace that. So I say a unit over at Brent Elementary School we worked on, that's $5,000 right there, boom, that went down, we have to buy another one. And so it's tough to, with all the units that we have within the district, it's tough to contemplate or budget for that because it's so much. So that $100,000 would give us some flexibility to make sure we can address it immediately.
But if we spend, again, I don't know what this entails, if we spent $20,000 a year on maintenance, would we extend the longevity of our units?
Well, if you change the filters and you do the cleaning, yes, that will help extend the life of the units.
Okay, so my question is, what would that maintenance cost, and what would the extension of longevity be? So
it's hard to factor. There's a lot of factors that deal with that. So
Didn't we put in like $150,000 a year to go through?
But that,
I mean, I know that's just basic.
That was for PAL, and so.
Oh, is it just PAL?
And Ms. Dingle, she's very good. She says you can't use that money.
Okay.
She said you can't use that money. And so I said, Ms. Dingle, I'd love to use that money. You can't use it. The board said only for PAL. So we only used, I think, maybe $20,000 on PAL during the time that we decided to go ahead and change them all out. So there's still that money sitting there.
That's fine. I mean, I'm a firm believer we gotta have, you know, HVAC for our kids and our teachers and stuff. I wouldn't sweat. I won't expect anybody else to. You can't learn in that kind of an environment. So.
But I would like to propose, you know, again, Mr. Cogdill has really spent a lot of time looking at them because, you know, and we have, I think, 2 people on staff. We have 2 technicians on staff that actually try to go around and keep them up and running all the time. We've actually looked at having someone come out and contract them because I have 2 guys trying to go throughout. You know, we have 1 million square foot of buildings in the district, so think how much HVAC's capacity or lack thereof that we really work with on a daily basis. So we've actually looked and talked about having contracting it because really it would help us if we really did the maintenances necessary on them every year as they are needed. It would help extend their life, but some of them, that time period is, you know, that break-even point is kind of gone that way. So, you know, I think it would be a good time spent if somebody would really tell you how many HVACs we have and kind of by campus how old they are, you know, and then look at whether or not we ought to look at a replacement cycle and a maintenance cycle. Because, you know, we receive lots of complaints and we spend a lot of time and effort trying to keep them up.
I think the other thing on that too is, for example, Brent,
yes.
It's an older school,
right.
But those units cover the classrooms, not the hallways.
Right.
So then the hallways are
hot,
warm, but that can also bleed into the classrooms.
Right.
So, you know, there's a way to, sometimes that's just
Typically, they don't
counterbalance.
you know, air condition the hallways just because it's just a passing through, so.
I thought we fixed that when we renovated it. Did we not
I
change?
mean, typical design for schools.
So when
You'll
we
see some
changed
that
the
have some
carpets
of them
and the
that
floors, we
typically they
didn't
don't
do the
like to spend money
HVACs over there?
For hallways, as they're just passing through.
Yeah, I think it was about half a
The
million.
bad thing about it is it's that big space.
That's true.
And you have the gym, the cafeteria, that is all warm and they're higher ceilings.
That's right.
So it just gets that much warmer in there. And then the offices, the classrooms feel fine. They're cool and the kids are comfortable, but it's that circulation in and out, people in and out the doors that.
And Brent and Chavez, you know, have condensing units that don't have rooftops because of the metal sloped roofs, so they're, we have vandalism, we have, you know, just the wear and tear of the weather, so there's lots of stuff going on.
Now, what do we do with the remaining balance?
It falls to fund balance. You know, I'll be happy
Well, no,
to
no, that's fine.
I'll be happy to give you a report and tell you.
Well, I didn't know if it was specified on what it could go to, or does it?
Well, that $150,000, the board was very specific on the motion. It stated we want to allocate $150,000 throughout the year to support the HVAC issue that we have at PAL. And so therefore, we're very liberal.
Yeah.
So, you know, and so any money that was not spent on PAL that we couldn't creatively assign to PAL, which we're pretty scrutinized that as well. But anything that wasn't specific with the PAL, those dollars fall back to your fund balance.
I meant on the insurance, the remaining insurance, that goes to the fund?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. That's up to the board.
That's another additional $1.1 million that the board has at their discretion. So even after we've asked for the $100,000. Now I think some of that money's is in escrow until we do some of the work on the roofs. And so
Our insurance company holds back about $500,000 until we put together a plan to actually address some of them.
But you do get another 20-year warranty on a new roof. So. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any future agenda items? Do you want to add the BYOD? Bring your own device? Do you want to have that for discussion?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, we have a lot on the meeting next month, on Monday, maybe next month, you think,
For October?
for October? Unless you guys think we need it for next week.
Probably not.
Don't need
I think
it.
we're full.
But I want to make sure that they've got enough time to put together.
Yeah.
That will give you plenty of time to
Yeah,
talk to
October,
the school
good.
districts.
Okay.
And I did just email you the insurance information that you requested earlier as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a future agenda? I've got one, and I don't know that it's necessarily a future agenda item, maybe just something to look at. The website, I still, even myself, when I try to pull it up, I always say this wrong, takes forever to load up. It is graphics driven, the pictures or whatever it is. I don't know if there's any way to fix that or improve it, but I've had other people talk about it and say that they try to pull it up at work, they can't. Try to pull it up at home, it just takes forever, it locks up on them a lot. So I don't know if that's necessarily a future agenda item, but just something.
Something we can explore is we do hear concerns about the website loading up and the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
Especially on mobile devices like a tablet.
Yeah, it locks up my computer, or even my work computer.
I do that. Cafeteria lines, I've been hearing that they're very long, with the middle school and high school. Is there anything we can do about that?
Well, we have our middle school and high school principals here that can certainly speak to that, because the reports that I've been getting are that the lines have been moving a lot quicker than the first week of school, and that there is about 12 to 15 minutes of time by the time the last kid goes through the line. Still 12 to 15 minutes left of time to eat, but we'll let them speak specifically to
Or should it be on agenda?
Or it could just be, we direct the superintendent to provide us a report on the lunchroom. wait
Just come that way
times
we can look at it
Yeah.
actually.
They can run a report from the cash register. I mean, it tells you the time and it's easy enough to tell you.
Just kind of give us an
What
idea.
time they're running.
Because I know I've seen a lot of kids talk about.
I mean, I can address it the first week. Our problem was we had a bunch of kids that didn't know their ID numbers.
Yeah.
And so now that kids have their ID numbers memorized and are able to go through the line quicker, we're seeing those lines move a lot quicker than they had that first week of school. So we haven't had a problem where anybody has not gotten lunch or there has been a delay in when we release, we have about 2 minutes in between lunches. And so we actually release our kids about 2 minutes before that. That gives our custodians time to clean for the next lunches. And when we release, even with 2 minutes before the lunches are like 28 minutes instead of the 30 minutes, we don't have a single student that hasn't eaten lunch yet. And they have plenty of time to get that food down.
They gave us a report last year that kind of gave us a real breakdown of about how long the last kid had to eat. Can we get something similar? It was pretty brief. Just, you know, the first kid going in, and by the time they got done, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be next week.
Friday's update.
At the high school, we created a fourth lunch, and I've been timing it all week. Every day, there's been at least 12 minutes when the last kid clears the line. Our problem is the lines are really long, and there's one way in and one way out. So it kind of creates a log jam in the area trying to get in and out of the lunch lines.
Well, and I think, you know, we had talked about our 5-year plan, and Ms. Engel, you can speak. I mean, just our cafeteria and our high school, it's a design issue. We're just outgrowing it, our space, with the number of kids that, you know, it's not going to fix it today. And maybe you guys have some ingenuity and some creativity of what to do different, but you get X amount of people at the cafeteria and X amount of time, and I don't know what else to do.
Well, the high school cafeteria, it is a design issue. It's really just not, we've looked at it to see if we can enlarge it or open it up somewhat. And there's really not any really easy way to make that cafeteria, because he's absolutely correct. There's kind of an area like this, and everybody's trying to get through it to get in to get their meals, and it bottlenecks there. But we can have some other people look at it, but we've looked at it once, and we just don't see how to actually extend it or make it even larger in that area. That's why the snack bar area is outside. I mean, I go down there myself, but I go there because you get salad and yogurt. And,
well, let's add that kind of just to the lunch lines and what we can do at the cafeteria.
That's a concern for me. I understand we have the fourth lunch, but when you have a kid in athletics or in band who start their day very early in the day, and they're not eating till 1:20 in the afternoon, or at least that's when they get in line to go eat, it's a pretty long morning for an individual. For me, it is.
Yeah, mine pack lunch.
Mine do too.
Mine do too, because they don't want to wait. So, but yeah, so the cafeteria improvement. You want to add that one? Okay, and then well, that kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I don't think they let us bring food trucks, do they?
No,
I don't think that would pass them.
Yeah, I just don't know, ma'am. No.
Department of Agriculture wouldn't approve that one, would they?
Any other future agenda items? Okay. Any board comments?
Just like to reiterate what Mr. Gutierrez said earlier. It's just staff, not a whole lot of public here today. Linda, fantastic job on Prestwick.
Yes.
Rod, the middle school, the academies, huge Zellers, huge construction projects all summer long. Great job banging those out, getting those in, getting those done, getting the kids in seats the first day of school. Awesome job, guys.
Yeah, y'all did a fantastic job. All of you guys did a great job. I think the schools have started off to a great start. A few hiccups, but overall I think things are going pretty smoothly. So, great job, everybody. Thank y'all.
Any more comments? All right, motion to adjourn.
Second? First?
Okay. Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passed. Meeting is over at what time?
10:06.
10:08.
So you can say something about your school.